1:05 p.m. The State Board of Education is returning to open session, and a quorum of the board is present. The regular meeting of the State Board of Education is reconvened. Ms. Evans, are there individuals who wish to address the board during today's meeting?
Yes, there are people who have registered to provide public comment today, and I will review the rules. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes to address the board, and I will keep track of time. We will be strictly following the time limit so that everyone has an opportunity to speak. Please finish your sentence and end your comment when the timer goes off. Thank you for your participation. It is the practice of the board not to respond to comments during the public participation portion of the meeting. We will maintain an atmosphere of respect for all people. Any person disrespecting anyone by name or otherwise will be asked to cease. Public participation will occur in person and virtually. We will begin with those persons that are physically in the room with us today and then move to those in the queue online. First person in the room today is Heather Eckner. And as she's approaching the board table, you should all at your seat have a packet from Autism Alliance.
Good afternoon, board members, superintendent, and department staff. I'm Heather Eckner. I serve as the statewide director of education for the Autism Alliance of Michigan. At the Autism Alliance of Michigan, our education pillar focuses on funding reform, appropriate identification, access to interventions, system accountability, and decreasing disparities. I'm offering this public comment today to elevate the voices of families of students with disabilities and to amplify critical advocacy priorities. The Autism Alliance has consistently advocated for meaningful systemic change that ensures students with disabilities in Michigan receive equitable access to education, appropriate services and supports, and inclusive opportunities that are not only required by law, but necessary for full participation in student success. Michigan ranks near the bottom nationally in graduation outcomes for students with disabilities, an unacceptable reality that demands urgent attention. One of the main drivers of this low graduation rate is the high rate of students with disabilities dropping out of high school. In fact, as the map included with this comment clearly shows, Michigan's dropout rate is one of the highest in the nation. Put plainly, 1 in 4 Michigan high schoolers with disabilities is dropping out. This devastating statistic has long-term consequences for thousands of families in our state. Other states with similar numbers of students with disabilities, including Massachusetts and Virginia, have dropout rates that are half the rate of Michigan. There are many negative effects of high school dropout on students. Essentially, dropping out can significantly hinder a person's future prospects in employment, personal well-being, and societal participation. These negative effects can be amplified for students with disabilities who already face challenges in school and lifelong success as a result of many system barriers in every aspect of daily life. The annual targets set in the Michigan Department of Education State Performance Plan are far too high and fail to result in serious improvement. A target dropout rate of 20% in 2025 is unacceptably high. The Autism Alliance calls for these targets to be revised downward. Several resources exist to assist states in addressing high school dropouts. The Autism Alliance encourages the Michigan Department of Education to take advantage of these evidence-based resources, which provide effective strategies to reduce dropout rates. We call for the department to undertake an aggressive and urgent initiative to dramatically reduce the dropout rate of Michigan students with disabilities. Thank you for your attention to this significant issue. We believe Michigan must do better. We must do it now. The data is clear. The experiences and stories of kids and families are real. The urgency is undeniable. So we urge this board to lead with boldness, transparency, and compassion for our most marginalized learners. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next in the room is Dr. Jeffrey Robinson. And as he approaches, he is a guest with Board Member Tilley and representing a group. They will have 10 minutes today.
Good afternoon to Dr. Rice, the State Board, and department heads. My name is Dr. Jeffrey Robinson. I serve as principal of the Paul Robeson Malcolm X Academy in the Detroit Public Schools Community District. I'm here today to give a short historical meaning and I guess historical accuracy on the meaning of Juneteenth, which is the newly celebrated holiday which we will embark on next week, I believe. I start by quoting the famous writer and social commentator Gore Vidal when he said that we live in the United States of amnesia. We learn nothing because we remember nothing, and it is in these times that we need to remember the facts of history in context in order to properly educate those children that are in the seats. In specific, as we prepare to celebrate Juneteenth, I think it's worth noting that people should really come, educators particularly should come to a knowledge of celebrating Juneteenth for the real tenets that the holiday was meant. Juneteenth was not a holiday where slaves in Texas Galveston, Texas found that they were free after a Northern general arrived to inform them. Certainly, they were informed and knowledgeable people that were in Galveston, and they celebrated not because they were free, but they celebrated the suppression of their own history. Juneteenth is a de facto celebration of such a suppression. Americans, especially Americans of African descent, should not celebrate when the enslaved were freed by someone else, because that's not the accurate history. They should celebrate when the enslaved freedmen freed themselves by saving the Union. There's this historical debate about the reasons for the Civil War. It was not state sovereignty, but it was over slavery. Such freedmen were heroes, not spectators, and their story is certainly being suppressed by the advocates of the Juneteenth holiday because it was incorrectly entered as a national holiday. The Emancipation Proclamation did not free the slaves. It made it legal for the disenfranchised slave population to free themselves while maintaining the supremacy of the Constitution and preserving the Union. They became the heroes of the Republic, as it was said by President Lincoln. Without the military help of the Black freedmen, the war against the South could not have been won. This history is worth reiterating in our public schools and celebrating. It's worth telling the story of how Americans of African descent, helped save the Union and freed themselves. Let's celebrate the truth and glorious history, a story of a glorious march of liberty. The Juneteenth holiday, as presented, does not necessarily give the true advocacy and self-determination that Black people have displayed, not just in the state of Michigan, but throughout the country. And so as we go to the Juneteenth holiday on June 19th, I wanted to leave the message with what I think is one of the more important entities in our state government, the state board, for this information to be integrated into curriculums around the state. Paul Robeson Malcolm X is a school that supplements the general curriculum of Detroit Public Schools, adding in that history that for decades have been left out of books and still suppressed. You may not believe it, but there are some books that are in print to this day that do not acknowledge Barack Obama and his presidency. How in the world is that possible with the historical achievements of society, and especially in what we see happening to our educational system today? Thank you for this opportunity to leave this facts of history with you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will now move to the queue online. Hello, caller, can you hear me?
Yes, sorry.
No, you're fine. If you could please let us know your name and where you're calling from, and you may begin your 3 minutes.
Yes, hello. This is Vanessa Kiesler from Launch, Michigan. I'm sorry I can't be there in person today with all of you as promised. I'm sure you're all going to miss me very much. I'm on vacation with my family, but I did want to call in and just celebrate the successful conclusion of the grants clock. So thank you so much to the Michigan Department of Education and to the State Board of Education for all of your hard work this year and your leadership. In the grants clock, we tracked 101 grants. These were state grants. There's more money that the department moved that we weren't tracking, so good job on that as well. There were 24 categorical grants, 52 direct grants, 20 formula grants, and 5 reimbursements. Special congratulations. I just saw the announcement we all did on 35M, the literacy funds. Those are really important funds that had a lot of steps to get them out. I know that's been a big labor for the department, and just wanted to say kudos and good job. And thank you for all your hard work, as well as shout out to the department for the process improvements they've been making around the grants process with the grants repository stemming from the task force that Superintendent Rice convened. And I think that's a good segue to the second part I wanted to focus on, which is reminding us all why Launch got involved with the grants clock. One of the things that we talk about a lot is the fact that we as a state need to be accountable together for making things better in our education system. We need to have reciprocal accountability. And so the grants clock is an example, or the grants process rather, is an example of where it's not just the department or just districts or just the legislature. It's actually all of us who have created the system, and it's on all of us to help streamline it and make it better and not leave it to districts to figure out. So again, kudos to the department for the work they've done there. And Launch is planning to take all of the data that we gathered from this process and pivot to an advocacy strategy with the legislature to, especially in this time that we're coming into where there's a great interest in shifting categoricals, we have some data now that we can share. So some of our key lessons are to prioritize the formula-based weighted funding, so emphasizing our equitable student-centered funding via our state's weighted funding formula. So things like Section 31A for at-risk students, bilingual Section 41, special education Section 51, and career tech ed Section 61. Those grants went out much quicker because there's a formula, and also they help us ensure we get to that adequate and equitable funding. And then we would advocate for a reduced reliance on competitive and direct grants. You know, those 52 direct grants that the department had to get out, that's almost an individual process for each one. So there's a lot of efficiencies to be found there. And then the competitive grants, you know, they do help sometimes, but there's many more steps and you have to run a process. So I think encouraging the legislature to think carefully about that. And then continuing the good improvements around communicating early and clearly with districts. We will also be joining voices with everybody saying we need a budget. We can't go, the longer we go without a budget, the harder it is.
Thank you for your public comment today.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. That's okay.
Have a good
Thank
day.
you. You too. Mike, are there any other persons who have pre-registered for public comment today?
Those are all the callers for today.
Very good. This concludes public participation.
Thank you, Ms. Evans, Mr. Flaminio. Appreciate the work. Board, it is 1:18, and we're going to go through a series of meeting minute approvals. I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular and committee of the whole meeting of May 13, 2025. Thank you, Dr. Pritchett. Do I have a second? Thank you, Ms. Lipton. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, if we could have a roll call vote.
Bullock?
Yes.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder? And Tilly?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of the State Board of Education work session of May 20th, 2025? Ms. Lipton moves. Do I have a second? Second by Dr. Pritchett. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Please.
Was it recorded?
Was it recorded?
It was not.
It was not recorded. Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing and seeing none, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Bullock?
Yes.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett? Pugh?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
And Tilly?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Yeah, please have a motion to approve the minutes of the Legislative Committee of June 5th, 2025. Moved by Chairwoman Dr. Judy Pritchett, seconded by Dr. Mitch Robinson. Is there any discussion associated therewith? Hearing and seeing none, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Bullock?
Yes.
Lipton?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Snyder? And Tilly?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Very good. Thank you very much, Board. Board, it is 1:20, and we're going to alter our agenda a little bit. Next item on today's agenda is the presentation on Michigan's top 10 strategic education plan, Goal 7, making progress toward increasing the numbers of certified teachers in areas of shortage. This presentation focuses on our efforts to address the teacher shortage. We welcome our presenters, Dr. Michelle Harmala, Deputy Superintendent of the Division of Educator Excellence, Career and Technical Education, Special Education and Administrative Law, Ms. Kelly Brozansky, Director of the Office of Educator Excellence, Dr. Sean Kotke, the Assistant Director of the Office of Educator Excellence, Mr. Dante Watson, Manager in the Office of Educator Excellence. This is an informational presentation. No board action is required. Presenters, welcome.
Dr. Rice, we're going to, pardon my voice, we're going to go ahead and start, and Dante will be joining us. Oh, there he is. All right, perfect. Thank you so much. We adjusted our schedule.
Yes, it's a schedule.
Yes, thank you. All right, thank you. Dr. Rice, I'm going to hand it right over to our team.
Thank you so much for having us today. So today we'd like to give you an update on Goal 7 of Michigan's top 10 strategic education plan to increase the numbers of certified teachers in areas of shortage. And this goal is operationalized by examining the quantity, quality, and diversity of our workforce.
Great. First, we'll look at quantity. One area of success has been in teacher preparation and enrollment. Between 2011-12 and 2016-17 academic years, overall enrollment decreased 59%. Since the 2016-17 academic year, enrollment has rebounded 71% as of the 2022-23 school year. Note that this is 15 points higher than the 56% increase we reported last August between 2016-17 and 21-22. This slide shows the detail of that decrease and then subsequent increase, which you've seen before. These data are expected to be updated to reflect the 2023-24 school year in the coming months. To complement increases in teacher preparation, enrollment, and completion, we've witnessed a steady year-by-year increase in the number of initial teaching certificates issued. These increases are driven largely by increases in completers of Michigan-approved programs rather than by completers of out-of-state programs, though these programs do account for a significant percentage of initial certificates issued in Michigan. We're seeing increases in specific fields due to intentional initiatives, which are driving the changes we see here. These figures are as of April 21st, 2025, and do not reflect the cohort of new teachers graduating this spring, so we'd expect to see even more increases. Now, we watch these numbers on positions reported to understand how the workforce is shifting. It's important to know how substitutes and vacancies are used in schools. We see an increase in vacancies reported by districts as districts have improved and increased their reporting of them. Although the number of teachers working under temporary credentials like permits is significant, it is important to note that permits facilitate participation in Grow Your Own programs. We focused on transforming the quality of teacher preparation for quite some time. Increasing the quality of preparation experiences contributes to achieving Goal 7, as research shows that when new teachers are underprepared for the teaching and learning environments in which they're employed, they're more likely to leave. In practical terms, replacing a single teacher typically costs between $10,000 and $20,000. The initiatives detailed here work together to provide teacher candidates with more authentic preparation experiences and a smoother transition from pre-service to in-service educator, while meeting high standards and addressing local needs. The recently approved special education teacher standards from our previous board meeting are another teacher quality initiative designed to support Goal 7. Over the last 8 years, net increases of 1,653 Black or African American teachers, 260 Hispanic or Latino teachers, and 192 Asian teachers have joined the teaching profession in Michigan. While these increases may appear modest in terms of a percentage increase, consider the power of student access to teachers. One teacher reaches more than one student through their class, through hallway interactions, through coaching, through volunteering, and through interacting with people in the community. More detail about this increase appears on this slide, which is one we've also shared before. With regard to sex, we can see there is a persistent imbalance between the overall ratios of male and female teachers to male and female students. However, we know that these ratios do vary between elementary and secondary schools. These increases are possible due to a range of initiatives in various stages of implementation to support Goal 7. As you know, in fiscal year 2020 and earlier, the State School Aid Act did not provide investments to address the teacher shortage. Small investments occurred in subsequent years, with significant investments in fiscal years 23, 24, and 25. Today, we will share updates about several of these initiatives, and we'll start with updates about the Michigan Future Educator Fellowship Program. The My Future Educator Fellowship, administered by our colleagues in the Department of Lifelong Education, Advancement, and Potential, or MyLEAP, provides scholarships of up to $10,000 annually to teacher candidates enrolled in full-time teacher preparation programs, including alternative route programs, in exchange for a commitment to teach in Michigan public schools upon graduation. Here are the figures for the number of teacher candidates supported in each of the first 3 years of the fellowship. Employment data collected by CEPI to assess fellowship recipients' fulfillment of the commitment to teach shows strong follow-through, with 92% of recipients having earned certification or been issued a permit, and 92% employed in Michigan public schools as of fall 2024. The My Future Educator Student Teacher Stipend, also administered by our colleagues in MyLEAP, provides $9,600 stipends to student teachers for each semester of their student teaching experience. Here are the figures for the number of teacher candidates supported in each of the first 3 years of the stipend. Next up is my colleague Dante Watson for updates on the next set of initiatives.
Thank you, Sean. We'll shift to Grow Your Own, or GYO grants, Michigan's investment in helping students and school staff begin their journey towards becoming certified educators in Michigan. The Section 27B Grow Your Own Staff Grant is a large, multi-year grant that has awarded $175 million in state and federal funds to districts to help their school staff become certified teachers in areas of district need at no cost to the individual. So far, over 1,600 staff are participating in one of the 163 district-designed Grow Your Own programs in partnership with 28 educator preparation providers. The most recent round of awards focused on districts to support staffing needs in schools identified as needing support. While funding is slated to end in December 2026, we will continue to track the number of GYO staff who obtain teacher certification and return to teach in their sponsoring districts. Next slide. Talent Together is also an important initiative for increasing quality, quantity, and diversity of Michigan's educator workforce. This program is initially funded under 27P with an investment of $66.4 million. The program is an important support staff to teacher route, which requires the same elements as other routes to certification, with supports for the individuals to work while training. To facilitate this, Talent Together is a registered teacher apprenticeship through the U.S. Department of Labor. Next slide, please. To support new educators, $50 million was invested for mentoring and induction programming. Under Section 27H, the Materials Creation Grant has been awarded to Western Michigan University in the amount of $500,000. Its primary goal is to produce free, high-quality resources that will strengthen mentoring and induction practices statewide. Currently, MDE is reviewing new mentoring standards and curriculum development is underway. Next slide. Also under 27H, the evaluation grant was awarded to the American Institute for Research. With an allocation of $500,000, this grant aims to evaluate the effectiveness of mentoring programs in Michigan and provide recommendations for strengthening programming. Baseline data collection will begin in October 2025, and a final evaluation report is due September 2027. Next slide. Finally, the Mentoring and Induction District Support Grant authorizes the remaining $49 million to be given to districts over 5 years to enhance local mentoring and induction programming. This includes stipends, professional learning, books, materials, staffing costs to cover time spent by both the new practitioner and mentoring contact with professional organizations to provide mentoring services for new administrators. We received 370 applications, totaling more than $43 million in funding requests. These applications are under review, and round 2 is expected to open 2005. Fall of 2005. 25, not 5. That's weird. Sorry. All right. Another initiative to support educators is the 27K Student Loan Repayment Program, which offers financial relief towards student loans for educators pursuing public service loan forgiveness. $225 million was allocated the first year of this program in fiscal year 2024. Next slide. As of fiscal year 2024, the department has distributed over $21 million to over 9,000 school staff across 553 school districts. Shown to your right, this bubble map presents a visualization of the awarded districts to fiscal year 2024 by prosperity region. The scale of the bubble indicates the total amount of money awarded to districts relative to other districts within the program. The applications are closed for this fiscal year, and they are currently under review. Okay, next. In fiscal year 2024, Section 27M allocated a total of $5 million for 2 different National Board Certification grants for teachers. National Board Certification, NBC, is recognized as the gold standard in teacher certification. It is a rigorous program designed to develop, retain, and recognize accomplished teachers. NBC teachers are recognized as experts in the field and often serve as team leaders, department chairs, and instructional coaches. The first of the 2 27M grants is 27M7, National Board First Time Candidate Grant. The statute allocates $1 million to pay the fees for teachers employed in school-wide Title I buildings pursuing NBC for the first time. In the first 2 rounds, over $500,000 was awarded to districts for eligible teachers. There are now 250 of our Michigan teachers from 32 different districts, pursuing National Board Certification under this grant. The 3rd round of this grant will open in the fall of this year. The Recognized Achievement Grant awarded those who achieved National Board already. So far, over $1.5 million has been awarded in the first 2 rounds of this grant. 154 teachers from 63 districts received awards. Some teachers receiving awards in each round. A 3rd round of this grant will be offered early in 2026. Now I'm going to pass it back over to Dr. Sean Kaki, who will share updates on the Rural Educator Credentialing Hub program.
All right, thank you. I'm very excited about this program. The Rural Educator Credentialing Hub, a $15 million grant to Central Michigan University to lead a consortium of educator preparation providers and rural school districts, blends goals of recruitment, preparation, and retention. The Michigan Consortium for Addressing Rural Education Expansion and Retention, or My Career Resource Hub, provides no-cost, expedited pathways to certification for rural educators by combining coursework and assessments of experiential learning. In its first year, My Career began with a cohort of 20 educators and expanded to a current enrollment of 75, the majority of which are pursuing licensure in high-needs fields such as special education. You could see on this map a distribution of the areas in which these teacher candidates have been recruited. Beyond initiatives supported by the state school aid investments, several further initiatives address Goal 7. We will speak about a selection of these next. The MTTC Test Fee Reimbursement Grant reimburses first-time test takers of any Michigan test for teacher certification. In its first year, nearly the entire $1 million investment was expended, and we are on track toward expending the full $1.1 million allocated in the current fiscal year. Beginning in 2022, our colleagues in the Office of Special Education allocated $5 million of IDEA other state activity funds to support currently certified teachers with earning special education endorsements. As of March 31st, 2025, 262 teachers have received funds amounting to over $2 million expended. Continuing in special education teacher preparation, our office has supported the development of expedited special ed teacher preparation programs in which teacher candidates can earn initial certification with standalone special education endorsements. The new special education teacher standards passed by the board in May are expected to bolster the progress made by these expedited programs. And third, the legislature authorized alternative route providers to offer special education teacher preparation beginning in 2021. So far, this initiative has yielded 150 teachers. Well, I didn't update my numbers. They're on the slide here. 157 teachers in 171 endorsements across 4 special education areas. Notably, this pathway is especially popular with veteran teachers adding additional endorsements in special education. And one thing I will add, the numbers on the last 3 initiatives, these are all mutually exclusive populations of special education teachers. There's no overlap there, so it is cumulative. For more on Grow Your Own programs, we go back to Dante.
All right, returning to Grow Your Own grants, we'll focus on Explorer Grant, which is funded with $1 million. This initiative is designed to help districts grow their future educators through 2 connected award parts. Awards for Explorer student programs in grades 6th grade through 12th grade, and awards for tuition support for Explorer alumni on their way to becoming certified teachers. Districts may apply for one or both parts of this grant. These parts work together to create continuity, starting with middle school and high school career exploration with the aim to encouraging students to return to teach in their communities. Explorer student programs are locally designed and offer flexible formats, such as clubs and classes, even courses embedded in a CTE pathway that meet local need. MDE provides free curriculum, staff training, and startup grants to help districts launch and grow these programs. Explorer student programs are growing. Since 2021, $3 million in Explorer grants have reached 89 districts. In fiscal year 2024 alone, the grants reached over 300 schools, 300 students across 7 eligible grade levels. Student engagement activities like field trips, student mentoring, and college signing days offer concrete experiences that bring education careers to life. Next. All right. The staff tuition program rounds out a comprehensive support system for Explorer graduates as they pursue teaching and consider returning to their home districts to teach. This grant-funded program bridges the gap between high school Explorer support and later financial aid like the My Future Educator Fellowship. It offers up to $10,000 per Explorer graduate for use at a Michigan college or university during that fiscal year. It also requires part-time district employment to keep graduates connected to their home districts. The next slide. Okay. This year, 3 districts are piloting tuition support for 29 Explorer graduates. These participants are working in the schools while preparing for teacher certification. We anticipate additional districts will offer tuition support in the coming years as their Explorer students graduate. We will continue to track many becoming certified, and we'll continue to track how many are going to become certified and return to teach in their home districts. Now, Kelly will share updates on the Future Proud Michigan Educator Launch Program.
So the Future Proud Michigan Educator Launch Program is a CTE program for high school students who are interested in careers in education. This is a competency-based model that is aligned with educator preparation standards and is offered in early middle colleges, career centers, or other local comprehensive high schools. The focus here is on completing rigorous industry-recognized credentials while they are in high school, earning college credits while they are in high school, and structured clinical experiences in education to set them on that path. Future Proud Michigan Educator Launch programs are intended to improve the quantity, quality, and diversity of the educator workforce with significant emphasis on local needs, and districts can choose from a number of approaches in order to fit their specific needs. In addition to the programs that we've shared today, we have a number of other programs that are making an impact on the educator workforce in Michigan, including but not limited to the areas on this slide or the organizations on this slide. We thank you very much for your time and the opportunity to share this information with you today, and we would be happy to answer questions that you may have.
Thank you, presenters. We appreciate that. That was a lot of tour in a short period of time. Board members, questions or comments? Ms. Lipton.
Thank you. Really great, informative presentation. I just had a question about the 27H mentoring and induction grant. And it looks, I wrote down that 370 applications so far. And I didn't write the number down, but it looked like maybe 48 million of the total 50 has presumably been applied for in that 370 million. And the window, it hasn't closed yet. It's still open.
The window's closed, but it's got multi-year funding. So the legislature included intent language that divides that 50 million up over the course of several years. So there's an intent for approximately $10 to $12.5 million per year, adding up to that 50 million over time.
Oh, okay, I understand. Okay, I was just, my question was, do you have any sense at this point what the sort of, the unfunded sort of capacity or desire is out there? Do you have a sense of, I mean, obviously when you fund a grant program, there's a cap, but do you have a sense of what the, in a perfect world, if it was fully funded, what that might look like, based on like what you would consider quality grant applications?
It'll be very, 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 very preliminary information since they are still under review.
Okay.
So thinking through what they would be needed, I mean, we had $43 million worth of asks and only about $10 million worth of funds. So, I mean, to be fully funded, there would need to be a significant more investment according to what districts are saying they need in their applications.
I just, I assumed that you had a sense of that. It's just helpful to know, just to provide, feedback to the legislature, if anything, in terms of, this is what you allocated and this is really the projected need out there. So thank you for that. Question about the MTTC reimbursements.
Sure.
And I was just curious to know, is this just dollar for dollar reimbursement for the teachers taking the test and they send in a receipt and then, I'm not suggesting that's how you put it. Is this like a dollar for dollar?
It is. When somebody registers for the test, they pay their fee, and after they have sat for the test, often on their way out to the car from the test center, they get an email that says, you're eligible for a reimbursement grant. Click here. and they'll click through, accept the terms, and then their money is refunded to whatever their original form of payment was.
So this is, so this goes to the out-of-pocket expense and taking them. Is there any assistance or, I mean, is this an exam that requires, you know, an expensive prep course? Or I just know that the analogy for attorneys is the cost of taking the bar might be thus and such, but the real hurdle is the standard prep program. And so I'm just curious, is there any assistance for, or do teachers need to take teacher prep program to take the test?
Well,
And is
yeah,
there help?
the
expensive?
test is, it's designed to be taken at the point of, say, 90% or more completion of one's teacher preparation program. So if it's a 60-credit program, after, say, 50 credits worth, you'd be eligible to sit for the exam. They independently register for it and then take it at that time. It is our firm conviction that the best preparation is the preparation that they get in their program for it, so that they get a quality experience in Dr. Robinson's music education program, so that they need no additional preparation, perhaps to learn the genre of taking a standardized test on a computer. And for that, it comes absolutely free through their test registration. So when they register for the test, they get a free practice test, so that they can get a sense of what the test is like. And we only, we only recommend those practice tests and practice materials that come from our vendor.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lipton. Other board members? Other board members? You know, the good news about presenting after lunch is people are a little tired. The bad news about presenting after lunch is people are a little bit tired. So don't pack up just yet. Dr. Robinson, go ahead.
I'm gonna do what I hate that people do at conferences and whatever. I'm gonna make a comment, not about exactly what you're talking about, but related. Whenever I think of the teacher shortage, and sadly I do quite a bit, I think of a boat that has a hole in it, and the boat is taking on water. And you need to do two things, right? You need to bail the water out, and that's kind of what we're doing here, but you also need to fix the hole. So I'm really impressed and thankful for all of these different, this is like a buffet of approaches to trying to solve a very complicated problem, and I'm really glad that the state is taking the initiative to do that. So A, thank you for that. But I also don't want us to lose track or take our eye off the ball that the whole is working conditions for teachers, and that we need to keep our eye on making sure that the jobs that we want teachers to take remain attractive enough and supported enough that we are keeping our veteran teachers in the classrooms, because it's not a net one-to-one gain when we replace a 30-year veteran with a brand new teacher. And I love my brand new teachers. It's my job. I like to help them get jobs. But a 30-year veteran has skills and backgrounds and experience that we can't afford to just miss without doing everything we can to keep them. So I guess I'm just making kind of a plea that at the same time that we're focusing with one eye on bringing new folks into the profession, that we're also thinking about making sure that the jobs that we have for them and the conditions that they're in are strong enough and supportive enough that we aren't losing teachers at the same rate or even higher. So I'll stop by saying thank you for everything that you're doing, and I appreciate all the great information.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Other board members? Okay. Raise your hand, anybody in the room who has been a public school administrator in the state of Michigan. Okay, there you go. All right. And raise your hand if you experienced a teacher shortage when you were an administrator. Yeah, okay. And raise your hand if the teacher shortage still exists. So I want to reflect upon some of Dr. Robinson's comments, and I'd like to do that with a series of questions for the team, if I could, please. Remind me, 2014, you began as the Wayne Westland superintendent
Sure did.
and as superintendent in Middle Cities.
Yep.
And you immediately began to make the case that there was nothing more important than teacher quality or teacher efficacy. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And do you still believe that?
100%.
Okay. And part of teacher efficacy is not simply how well they were trained or how experienced they are, but the conditions surrounding the teaching inside the classroom and outside the classroom.
Correct.
Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, to which Dr. Robinson just referred. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. And would those conditions include class sizes?
They would always include class sizes.
Right. So class sizes affect the efficacy of a teacher.
Correct.
A teacher can be stronger or weaker, but he or she is going to be made stronger or weaker by the conditions in the classroom, which include but aren't limited to the number of children in that classroom. Is that right?
I'd agree.
Okay. And do those conditions include support staff outside of the classroom?
They sure do.
They do. And how about high-quality instructional materials? Are those included as well?
Absolutely.
So materials, for example, that mention our current president, John Kennedy, are perhaps not as up-to-date as those that refer to our current president. Is that accurate?
That is a true statement.
Okay. And is professional development a part of what makes a teacher efficacious or not?
It's a very big part. You
Okay.
can't stop learning as a teacher,
Right. And
administrator for that matter.
is my sense of efficaciousness as a teacher related to the extent to which I want to continue in the profession?
Not only that, it's related to how well students do.
Tell me more about that, please.
A teacher who believes they can help students learn have students who then learn. Teachers who don't believe they can help students learn or don't believe students can learn then have students who don't learn.
So some of that is your predisposition coming into the profession, and some of it is your acclimation to the profession and your training in the profession. If you train with people who believe all children can learn, you're more likely to adopt that perspective. If you train with people who don't, you're less likely to adopt that perspective. So what children experience is in part a function of what staff experience and beyond,
Correct.
right? Both within the classroom and outside of the classroom.
It's a culture not just for the children, not just for the educators, but it's a culture of the district, of the school. It affects everybody.
So when we talk about the pipeline, to which Dr. Robinson referred, about which you presented, that pipeline exists, if you will, pre-birth, that is pre-involvement in the profession, certainly as a practitioner. So grow your own programs, middle school kids, high school kids, grow your own programs for support staff members to become teachers, programs, scholarships, fellowships, student teacher stipends for aspiring teachers to become, and then everything that you provide to teachers once they are teachers. Because I can come in the revolving door and go right back out, can't I? And I think that's what Dr. Robinson is talking about. Don't just zoom more people through a revolving door. Reflect upon how you make the door less revolving.
Correct.
Okay. Some of that is what we pay teachers, but some of that are the conditions under which they teach. Dr. Carnell mentioned 4 legislative asks. She mentioned low class sizes and high poverty K-3s. Do you consider that, again, a function of the conditions?
I think so, absolutely.
And the high quality instructional materials?
100%.
Okay. And similarly, the professional development, we were talking about letters in the morning, but any professional
other
development that's
things.
strong,
Sure.
that makes me feel efficacious.
Yeah.
You feel like that's a part of the conditions which are more likely to keep people in the profession,
Correct.
not have them leave the profession, not have them create a revolving door within the profession. I'm on a roll. No, said the lobster. Give me a moment. Okay. Tell me a little bit about time. Okay. We talk a lot about raw materials as teachers, and some people lament how children come into classrooms, but we cannot determine who walks into our classroom for the most part. Our young people are our young people, as well they should be. And we have the responsibility to take every young person to a better place. But we can affect where they go. We can't affect who they are coming into a classroom, whether they have money or not, whether they have engaged parents or not, whether they have certain exposure or not. But we can sure change a trajectory in a classroom. But it's harder if you don't have kids very many hours and days, isn't it?
It's very hard. And remember, all the things teachers have to address in a day, right? So time, while it's there, is divided up into smaller chunks of what teachers must get done on behalf of children. And reading is one area of instruction, so time is critical.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're
Ms.
welcome.
Tilly?
So you guys just touched on a few things, but one of the things that you described was the Pygmalion theory. So how do you work through that with teachers? Is there training that you do for those biases that they experience when they're working with students? I mean, a Pygmalion is a very real thing. So
I'm wondering if you're asking about what we do to prepare them or what we do while they're in the school system.
it would be actually, I would think it would be both. The preparation and then the continued trainings, reaffirming those things. Do you understand what the Pygmalion theory is?
Elaborate for me, because it's not clicking for me right now.
So
Thank you.
the Pygmalion theory is basically saying you have student A and student B, and the educator would treat student A a certain way because they look at student A a certain way and say, oh, you can do this, you can do that, and they give them all of the resources in the world. But student B, they have those biases and those predispositions, so they look at student B as someone that can't achieve and can't reach those benchmarks that student A can, so they don't even give them the resources.
Sure.
But student B could become just as qualified if student B had the same resources or equitable resources to help them get there.
Thank you. So I'll say one thing and get started, and then I'm going to refer to the standards. I think we try and help teachers understand that good instruction, good teaching helps all students to learn. We've made some changes in our preparation standards over the last few years to ensure we're addressing and focusing on all students as learners. Teachers understanding their implicit biases. You have seen some of that come before you. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that.
Yeah, it's a constant theme throughout our teacher prep standards that teachers take an asset-based view of their children. So the first thing I do is look for what my children are strong in and what assets they bring to the learning experience. And then I help chart the course to where I want to bring them in learning standards, as opposed to a deficit view of I'm going to see where they don't have where they have problems, right, and focus on that. And so that's a constant theme throughout the standards. Another element within our teacher preparation reforms that contributes to resolving this issue is the enhanced clinical experiences. The more times that our teacher candidates get to spend in classrooms with different children who don't look like them or don't, and some things are visible and others areas of diversity are not visible. So who don't think like them, the better prepared they're going to be when they get their own classroom to work with all children and see all children's assets.
I'll just add one more piece about in-service professional development. I think the same thing happens there at the district level or ISD level, depending on where people access their professional development. An example would be helping teachers to understand invisible disabilities. So for example, a learning disability, you can't always see it. You can see it in production of work possibly, but you can't see it on the student themselves. So to help teachers understand that you can't always see the experience the student is having. You don't want somebody to assume somebody is lazy, when in reality they're working 3 times harder than every other student in that classroom because they're fighting through whatever disability or challenge they have. So over the years, certainly what I have been a part of and what others here have been a part of is helping teachers to recognize that. So that would be an example in service.
I think that's really good. I know it's difficult because of the class sizes a lot of times because you can't tailor things, so you can't always meet those individual needs. But I think that's something we need to focus on more so that we make sure that we're giving each student the resources that they need to be successful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Tilley. That was really important. Let's stay there for a second, okay? So Pygmalion in the Classroom, a famous essay from years ago, harkens back, by the way, to My Fair Lady and. Expectations drive performance. Expectations drive performance. Whether you put expectations on the ceiling or the floor, children will know what you expect of them, and they won't disappoint you. Think about that. Power of expectations in helping kids soar. If we could bottle it, enormously impactful. But it's not simply the expectations. Expectations hugely important, but it's also those conditions under which kids teach. Candace Jackson was teaching 33 kids at Mann Learning Community. She could do that. Not too many people can teach 33 third graders at Mann Learning Community successfully. And were she here, she would say, well, I appreciate that, Dr. Rice, but that's not what we should have. We shouldn't hold that up as an exemplar. I'm not holding it up as an exemplar. I'm holding it up as an exception. The rule should be her class size should have been cut in half. That's what the rule should have been. When we see a third grade teacher at Doyle Ryder in Flint teaching 27 children, not acceptable either. Not that it can't be done. That teacher was doing it. But a lesser teacher is going to leave the profession because he or she doesn't feel efficacious as he or she needs to feel in his or her profession. Or he or she will continue in the profession, but will go into a district where he or she feels more efficaciousness. Not that he or she can't teach in a different district, but rather wants to feel better about his or her teaching, and the conditions don't permit it. The support of teachers is not just pre-teaching, it's during teaching. To Dr. Robinson's point, and Ms. Tilley, to your point, those expectations are critical. And the conditions often chip away at our young teachers' expectations for kids. They make determinations about kids which aren't commensurate with children's ability, but rather with their experience in given classrooms with given conditions, not the inherent capability of the young people for whose education they are responsible.
You are absolutely correct. Pygmalion does apply to the educators as well, and it's important that we make sure that we give them the resources that they need and not even, I don't even know if I want to go into that, but making sure that we are not um, determining that we want to get rid of educators because of test scores and different things. We want to make sure we give them the resources so that they can succeed. And note, I did not read the essay, but Pygmalion was a part of my MBA training. And also another note, you can see the Pygmalion movie probably on TCM because it's a movie as well.
There you go. If you don't want to watch My Fair Lady, you can watch the Pygmalion movie. Thank you, Ms. Tilley. Ms. Snyder.
We've sort of descended into philosophical concepts here, and I want to add to it. So you said expectation drives
Performance.
performance, and outcomes do in fact matter. Outcomes translate to the future that our children hold. And you mentioned that when we give them the expectations, they don't typically want to disappoint us, right? Whether it be the teacher or the parent or whoever is encouraging the expectation to exist in relationship to the outcome. My son came home last night and he gave me one of his math tests. He knows his capacity. I know his capacity. We both know what I expect of him. At the end of the day, it's more important to me that he develop those expectations for himself, right? So he said, I don't like it, but I'm okay with it, Mom. No, that's not good enough for you, right? It's not about what I think, right? In that respect, because now we've crossed the line of it's an expectation I set for you, and you say, I don't like the outcome, but I'm okay with it. I want to know that you don't like the outcome and you're not okay with it, because then I know you will do something about it for you. We can make change in education, we can set policy, we can do everything underneath the sun. But outcomes will not improve if we aren't literally stirring the hearts of children in that sense, right? Like, he's only 10, and he already said to me, I don't like it, but I'm okay with it. No, that's where I'm pushing back. Being okay with it, that I have to tell you that's not something you can be, because you need to change what's best for you, and only you can do that, right? He's that young that he can already recognize the philosophy in his own heart. And I think that, that we can perfect environment, or we can pursue the perfection environment, and yet we still have to remember that we are encouraging them to set standards for themselves. And our expectation of them really is that they do that and then meet them for themselves.
Self-determination theory, if we want to throw another one at the table.
Let's do it.
A lot of people talk about the importance of higher order governance, and there is an importance to higher order governance, to state governance. There's also an importance to local school district leadership, but there's nothing more impactful for an individual child than the individual teacher in front of him or her in that school life of that child. Now, outside of the school, that's a different story. But inside the school, there's nothing more important than that relationship with the strong teacher who has good conditions within which to teach. It's not just my opinion, although it is. It's the research. It doesn't make up for challenges outside of school. But there are factors that we control. There are factors that we don't. We don't control poverty. We do control certainly have a greater opportunity to affect the conditions under which teachers teach and students learn. And I appreciate you want to speak. I'll acknowledge you in 1 second. The teacher shortage has disrupted not simply in Michigan, but across the country, the most valuable resource that we have in classrooms across the country, our teachers. That disruption took place over years. It has taken years to correct. It will take more years to address. And that's unhappy. And some people don't like hearing about it. That's the reality. When children in certain communities are being taught by software because there are no certified teachers to teach them, that's wrong, and that's not going to get it done for us in the state. Mr. McMillan.
I know teachers who have left the profession because they were told they have to lie to parents and about whether their child goes to a boys' bathroom or girls' bathroom, whether they're being called by a different name. And also teachers that, they've had it with the having to teach that there's white supremacy society that, that just a lot of woke, a lot of things that are, quite frankly, not have anything to do with literacy. And we talk about literacy issues. Well, if we actually got back on task of teaching the fundamentals, you'd see less teachers leaving, and you'd see better literacy outcomes. So I think the environment is very important, and it's become very hostile to people who have a hard time lying to parents and teaching things that are just profoundly divisive and wrong.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other reflections from for the presenters? Hearing and seeing none. Presenters, you did a terrific job in taking us through an enormous amount of work. We're going to keep the lights on this work, because the reality is that for a number of years, local educators primarily addressing the teacher shortage by themselves. And it has only been in the last few years that they have been able to address the teacher shortage with support from the state. That's not just my impression, that's what your presentation showed. That for years there was a teacher shortage before there were resources to address the teacher shortage. And those resources need to continue.
Or lay off some administrators.
Excuse me.
Well, this begging for money is just getting ridiculous. If you laid off administrators like they should, then you'd have lower class sizes. So, but you have to defend your people, I understand.
The point I was making was that the teacher shortage for years was the sole province of local educators without state resources to address an issue that was created by inadequate state resources.
Or bad spending.
And if you need a timeout, take one.
Well,
okay. If we can you go back to the 23,000 to 9,500 to 16,000 slide?
Yes.
It's whining.
Enrollments, yeah. That one?
No, it was the same. There you go.
Okay.
That one?
So,
Oh, I thought he was talking about.
so in 2011, there were 23,000 people preparing for the profession. This is not my opinion. These are facts. And that year, the state legislature cut $470 per child in the foundation allowance, required a 20% minimum health insurance payment for each educational employee, and created a new, less lucrative retirement tier in the teacher's pension system. The consequence of those three actions, among others, was that the number of people preparing for the profession plummeted from 23,000 to 9,500. That, again, is not my opinion, although it is. It's also fact. In the ensuing years, we have rebuilt up the pipeline. It is not fully repaired. No one is trying to say that. But we are rebuilding the pipeline. First, those who are coming into the pipeline, and then subsequently, to Dr. Robinson's point, those who are in the pipeline, creating better conditions for those in the field. It took a long time to get where we are. It's going to take a long time to come out of it. I'm not asking for a nickel at the moment. I'm simply asking for the continuation of programs that have helped begin to pull us out of a teacher shortage. And I'm asking not for my benefit, but for the benefit of young people who don't have the wherewithal to advocate on their own behalf at this point. Soon enough, they will have that ability. I appreciate you. Thank you, presenters. The next item on today's agenda at 2:15 p.m. is a presentation from Ms. Irene Miller. We welcome Ms. Miller to the board meeting today. Ms. Miller is a survivor of the Holocaust who has achieved many things both personally and professionally. She has spoken at various events in and out of schools throughout the United States and Canada. Ms. Miller will be sharing her story with us today. This is an informational presentation. No board action is required. Ms. Miller, welcome.
I am one of the 10% of Jewish children who survived the Holocaust. Among the 6 million of Jews who were killed were 1.5 million of children. 90% of Jewish children were killed. Though I can tell you only about my survival journey, those of us fortunate to be left alive become also the voices of those who didn't live to tell their story. I was born in Warsaw, the capital of Poland. This is what I looked like when Nazis attacked Poland. I was 6 years old. My immediate family was made up of 4. Here is my older sister and I. She is 8 and I am 3. And our parents. But we had a large extended family in Poland numbering close to 100 members. When Nazis attacked Poland, it seems to me that Warsaw was under siege for a few weeks. Day and night, bombs were falling. We lived on the top floor of an apartment building where it was the most vulnerable place because bombs were falling through the roof ceilings and into the homes. So with the cooperation of friends who lived on the second floor, we moved in with them. But even there it wasn't safe from the bombs. One night, a bomb fell into that apartment, exploded by the door, leaving the only way out was through the window. My father, who was a very tall man, knocked out the window and jumped, and he said, "We have to quickly follow him before the whole place gets engulfed in flames, and he will catch us." When my turn came, I stood on the windowsill and looked down. It seemed so far down. I was so scared I just froze in place. My mother pushed me out the window. Somehow my father did not catch me. I fell in a pile of glass, cutting my arms and legs. When the family was down, my mother picked me up, carried me to a bomb shelter, and there she was pulling out shards of glass out of my limbs, sponging the blood with her nightgown. These running to bomb shelters occurred over and over, particularly at night. At some point, we lost the water. A bomb severed the water pipes, and the only way we could get at least drinking water is running down the streets when there was still a functioning faucet. I remember where I was when Nazis entered Warsaw. I was in our own apartment. I don't know it was the 4th or the 5th floor, but I was too high up to see the faces of the Nazi soldiers. They were filling the width of the streets, 10, 15 abreast, marching and pounding the streets. You know how long ago that happens. When I speak to in schools, I tell them it happens not just before their parents were born, but even before their grandparents were born. Yet there are still some sounds, some smells, aromas to which I still now react emotionally. One such sound are low flying planes. Another one is a rhythmic pounding on a hard surface. I hear it and I tighten up. My parents felt that being Jewish, and they were liberal, open-minded people. My father was a leader in the labor union in the Jewish division. They felt that as such, they would be among the first ones to be persecuted by the Nazis. So sometimes during the winter of 1939 and 40, they sold the lease to our apartment, hired a Polish guide to smuggle us across the border into the Soviet Union. On one side, as you know, Poland borders with the Soviet Union. Why to go there? Because at that time the Nazis were not there. Of course, later during the war, you know, they attacked the Soviet Union as well. And why to smuggle us? Because the borders were closed. The Soviets were protecting the borders with their soldiers. Yes. I remember the last leg of the journey trying to cross the border. It was in the middle of the night, extremely cold. We were wearing layers and layers of clothing to keep warm and to minimize under luggage. We were sitting inside a wagon of hay, the hay over our heads, and over all that a blanket. So should a Nazi soldier come across that wagon at night, he would not be able to see that there are people in it. At some point, this man stopped, let us off in an area that was surrounded by tall trees. You couldn't see what's beyond that. He said that we had crossed the border already and pointed where in the morning we were to take a train towards the city my parents were headed, called Bialystok. We huddled up for the remainder of the night. And when we woke up in the morning and left that secluded area, we saw fields with thousands of people laying on the snow, leaning against bags, suitcases. This man did not take us across the border. He left us under no man's land. Of course, my parents didn't want to go back to Poland from where they were trying to escape. So my mother pulled out a blanket, spread it over the snow among people. People were sitting very close, one next to another. She also pulled out a down comforter, commonly used in Europe in winter. And this place in an open field became my home for about 6 weeks. My mother would repeat to me over and over, move, move. If you move, you're not going to be that cold. I moved as much as I could. And when I couldn't anymore, I would crawl under the covers. At some point, my feet got frostbitten. I had open wounds, was unable to wear my shoes. It was too painful. So my mother tore a garment of hers, wrapped my feet in rags, and I moved around as well as I could. The only food we were able to buy was that which the peasant women from nearby villages would come after sundown, bring bread, boiled potatoes in their skins, sometimes farmer cheese, and charge exorbitant prices. The only fluid we had to drink was melting snow. There were woods in the area, and people were making fires to warm themselves and to melt the snow for drinking. Though I was a little girl, yes, you saw me, I remember many scenes, starting with the no man's land. But two images from the no man's land are still vivid in my mind. I woke up one night. There was a strange man next to me under the covers. I tried to push him away, but apparently I fell asleep. And when I woke up in the morning, the man next to me was dead. People were dying from diseases, from starvation, from exposure. And now the peasant women were also bringing shovels for sale. And the young men buried the dead in the shallow graves. The other scene, I was standing with my mother by a fire trying to warm myself, and a young woman approached holding a baby in her arms wrapped in blankets, and people assumed that she wanted to warm herself and her child, so they parted, letting her come close to the fire. But as she did so, a man looked into her arms and said, "Lady, your baby doesn't need warming anymore. The baby was dead." The man took the dead baby out of the mother's arm and proceeded with the Soviet soldiers who were protecting the border. The crowd followed him. He laid the baby in front of one of the guards, and the crowd started crying and shouting, "Let us in, let us in." And the guards, all they did is threw the baby back into the crowds. My parents apparently concluded that they had to take some drastic steps, so we are not going to survive just laying in the open field. One night, my father smuggled himself across the border on the Soviet side. He must have surveyed the area in advance. On the Soviet side, he bribed an official to give him a letter permitting the family to cross the border. But when he returned with that letter, the letter said he may take his children, said nothing about my mom, and the guards would not let my mother go. Our parents decided that my father should take my sister and myself to safety and see thereafter what we can do to bring over mom. We walked a whole night in the forest, and for me it was such a painful experience. The open wounds on my feet were wrapped in rags, and the earth was frozen and hard. But eventually, we made it to the city, Bialystok. Around the city were clusters of Jews from Poland. We ended up in one such cluster, a wooded area with a lot of scattered little cabins. This must have been at one time the property of a wealthy landlord, and those cabins were for his workers. No furniture of any kind, just a few families on the floor in each cabin. But after being for 6 weeks in an open field in the winter, laying on a wooden floor with a roof over my head, I probably felt like a queen in a palace. My father had no more money left, and also travel in the Soviet Union was forbidden. Only those who were big dignitaries or had a lot of money to bribe an official would be able to get a ticket and permission to travel. So my father tried to reach the no man's land on rooftops of trains. He was caught by the police, put in jail for a few days, let out, and kept on trying it over and over. During all the time, when our father was gone trying to save mom, my sister and I were left alone. Here and there, a caring person offered us a meal, but I don't remember what and how we were able to eat beside that. Eventually, our father made it to the no man's land, but by the time he got there, no one was there anymore. The Nazis came, took all the people, including my mother, put them on trains in direction to Poland and Germany. For a little girl to think that she might never see her mama was very difficult to understand and even more difficult to accept. Our father found some work in the city, was commuting daily by train. My sister and I were left alone. She, 5 years my senior, became my little mama, and we managed as well as we could. Days went by, weeks went by, maybe more. Nothing unusual happened. Then one day, we were standing over a basin propped up on a low stool, so I could try to reach it as well, trying to do the family laundry. What did I know, a little kid, how you do laundry? I spilled it on myself, on the floor. My knuckles got bloody. My sister was angry. I was upset. Amidst of all the tension, the door to our cabin opened and our mother walked in. You can imagine my enormous joy and excitement, but also confusion. I didn't know whether she was alive, and it seemed to me that it had been so long since I last saw her, and suddenly she showed up. It took me a very long time to believe that my mama will not vanish one day. She appeared and she would disappear, and I would wake up many times at night to touch, is mama here? Well, we were happy now. We were together. That was the main thing. And we were no longer hungry as we were under no man's land. Whatever my father was earning was enough to buy food. But the joy didn't last for very long. We started hearing that Soviet soldiers were coming in the middle of the night and taking away all the young men, and no one knew what happened to these men. And my father then was a young man. One day, there was a rumor that our cluster was scheduled such a raid. So my mother took the train to the city where Dad worked to warn him not to come back until he hears from her. But she missed the last train coming back to us that day. So that night, when my sister and I were alone, Soviet soldiers kicked in the door of the cabins. They gave us a few minutes to scoop up whatever we could, and they marched us to a train station where there was the long line with cattle cars, and they would shove in as many people as they could in each of those box cars. My sister and I cried and cried that we are not going to go without our parents, and those soldiers kept on telling us all kinds of lies. When the platform was almost empty of people, we saw from a distance a small truck and our parents on it. Was I happy to see them? I never asked, never found out how they learned about the raid, how they found transportation. All that mattered to me, they were there. And as soon as they arrived, they shoved us in into one of those box cars. So many people in each of them that there was no room for anyone to stretch themselves on the floor. People were leaning against bags, suitcases against wall, whatever they could. There were two sliding doors that would pull together the boxcar, and across them on the outside, a heavy metal bar to hold the doors in place. When we were inside and the doors pulled, it was so dark you could hardly see. There were no windows, no lights. This was meant for transportation of cows, horses, and so on. The only light was that which was coming between the cracks of the boards. Once a day, soldiers walked around with buckets of soup, and everyone was given a cup of soup. On the days when we were lucky, we got with it a little piece of bread. But those lucky days were very far apart. Most of the time, a cup of soup was the food for the day. Every morning, they let everyone out under the train simultaneously to relieve themselves. It doesn't take very long. You forget about the notion of privacy. People were doing whatever they had to do. Everyone was extremely hungry. Many were getting sick. And everyone scared, anxious, not understanding why the soldiers picked us up, where they're taking us, and what they would do with us. We were on the train somewhere between 6 to 8 weeks, and then through additional means of transportation, delivered to a labor camp in the Siberian taiga. Taiga is a dense forest covering the northern part of Russia. Our little houses were placed right against the forest. Bears would come to the door front. At night, we heard Siberian wolves howling, and we were scared. We heard stories about wolves attacking people in the dark. And in Siberia, in wintertime, there are only about 3 hours of daylight, and the rest is dark like night. And in the summers, it's in the reverse. Temperature there would drop to 50 below and lower. If a bird, for some reason, didn't fly away on time, it would freeze to the tree like a lump of ice. If you were outside with any part of your skin exposed, it didn't take more than a few minutes and it would get frostbitten. We did not have clothing for that kind of a climate. And everyone had to work, including my sister, who was by then 11 or 12. The main work was a cement factory, and some young men were sent to further clear the forest. I did not talk to my children about my Holocaust experiences. I did not talk to anyone about it until a few years ago. There were people who worked with me for many years, and all they knew is that I was born in Europe. But my youngest child, Naomi, kept on asking me, and apparently I related some bits and pieces to her because I found in her high school writing reference to two situations in Siberia. There was one store there, of course, the governmental store, and rarely would you go there looking for something you needed in your daily life, and they had it there. But people would frequent the store to see what do they have today there. But no matter what they had, everything was rationed. My mother sent me once to the store to get the family's rations of bread. Bread came in loaves, black like mud, heavy like clay, sitting exposed on the counter. And the clerk in the store would weigh, in our case, what was the portion for 4 people. So I told Naomi that I was giving a large piece, and with it a tiny, tiny little piece. And it took so much willpower for me to control my desire of eating the little piece because I was extremely hungry. So Naomi said, if you were hungry, how come you didn't eat it? I told her this was the bread for the whole family, and we had to wait until Mama divided it. But no sooner did I hand over this bread to my mother, she put a little piece in my mouth. At some other time, when it was my birthday, my mother said, let's pretend that there is no war. What kind of a present would you like for your birthday? I told her a big loaf of bread and that I could eat as much of it as I want to. And I saw tears flowing down her face. And I had no idea what did I do wrong to make my mama cry. We were hungry day in and day out. We were in Siberia somewhere between 2 and 2.5 years, and I remember one day I wasn't hungry, and I remember that day well. We were given a tiny little piece of land, and we planted potatoes. And my mother said, on the day we harvest the potatoes, we'll have one meal. You can eat as many potatoes as you want to. On the day we brought the potatoes from the field, the store had fresh herring. My mother got one herring, cut it into little pieces. We baked the potatoes outdoor and ate them with herring. Oh, was that good. I don't remember how many potatoes I ate, but I remember a thought that stayed with me thereafter for a very, very long time. I thought, maybe I'll be so lucky that when I grow up, I'll become rich. Not a little rich, very rich. Then I'll be able to eat potatoes every day. I thought that to eat potatoes anytime you want to, you have to be either royalty or rich. You know, I'm neither one nor the other, but I do eat potatoes. But no potato will ever taste as good as the one in Siberia when I was so hungry. From Siberia, we ended up in Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan then was a southern republic of the Soviet Union. Now it's an independent country. I am sure that my parents felt going south to a warm climate, life will be easier, food will be more available. But while we were very hungry in Siberia, we almost starved to death in Uzbekistan. We were placed in a very poor farming village. My parents were not given any land to cultivate, and there was no way of finding work. My father walked from farmer to farmer, willing to do any kind of work in exchange for food. Once in a while, he would get a day's work, but most of the time now. No, there were stretches of time that we lived on boiled grass and leaves. My mother would go into the field to pick up anything that was growing wildly green, boil it, drink it first herself. If she was okay, she would give it to us as well. There was another period of time that we lived on broiled onions. Some farmer must have had a good crop of onions. In exchange for some of my mother's clothing, she got a bag of onions. We all came down with malaria. Malaria is such a difficult, violent disease. You could see a person one day, talk to him, he was fine. A week or two later, he was gone. I said, violent, I had malaria. Most of the time, I was not conscious because the fever was so elevated. But when I was, I remember screaming, my bones were breaking, my bones were breaking. No matter how many blankets I had over me, I was shaking violently with such a chill I couldn't control. And after I recovered from malaria, I had difficulty walking for some time. There were some Jews from Poland and Uzbekistan. I don't know who they were and how they were able to do it, but they established orphanages for Jewish children from Poland and would recruit not just orphans, would try to find any Jewish child from Poland. This was simply an attempt of saving the children from dying of starvation. One day, a man showed up in our village, talked to our parents. Next day, he came with a horse and buggy. Our mother told us we'll go to a place that there will be other children. Food will be more available. And they, our parents, will visit when possible. I think it took us a few days on that buggy until we came to the village where the orphanage was housed. The orphanage was basically contained in one large room. From one end of the wall to the others, boards were ripped off the floor, propped up on stack of bricks, and girls were laying tightly on those boards, covered with old blankets, and their heads completely shaved. Across the room, the same arrangement for boys and their heads shaved as well. You remember my first picture with long braids? They shaved my head completely. The caregivers shaved the children's heads because the sanitary conditions were horrible. I don't remember when and where I was able to take a bath or a shower. And they feared that under those conditions, the kids will come down with lice that spread diseases. And apparently lice nestle in hair. But we found out very quickly that lice nestle in all kinds of other places as well, because we were about 100 bald-headed kids covered with those crawling things. You know, lice are no larger than the head of a pin, but they make your skin itch and burn so badly that you are ready to rip it off. I remember bleeding all over from that intense scratching. And you know another funny thing? I will remind you how long ago it happened. The second I think about the lice, my head starts itching so badly that I want to take the 10 finger and scratch. It lasts a few minutes and it goes away. Few months after entering the orphanage, my father died. There was an epidemic of dysentery in the village my parents lived. No pharmacy, no physician. My mother walked the whole day to another community in search of penicillin. I don't know if she obtained it or not, but when she returned, my father was dead, buried in a communal grave. My mother didn't even know in which one. The war ended in 1945, but I stayed in the orphanage in Uzbekistan, I think, till almost 46. I don't know what was the reason we were unable to return sooner, but I had no other choice but to wait. During all the years of the Holocaust, hunger was a daily part of my life. And this is the kind of hunger that is difficult to explain unless you experienced it. It doesn't just take over your whole body, but every thought that you have. And you have to consciously fight to think about things other than food. There was a lot of fear and anxiety, not knowing what will happen from day to day. No newspaper, no radio. And if the adult knew anything, they probably thought, well, those are just kids. What do they know to know? The less, the better. But it worked the other way around. The less I knew, the more I was concerned, the more I was speculating. And there was also a lot of loneliness. It might sound very strange. You can be in a room of 100 kids and feel lonely, or of 100 people, if there is no one person who pays special attention or shows any affection. But I try to do everything possible to keep myself constructively involved. I learned how to read when I was a young child. Polish, because Polish was my childhood language. While in the Soviet Union, I learned how to read and how to speak Russian. And I would do everything I could to read in one language or another, whenever I could. The only place where I was expressing what I felt and what I thought is by writing poetry. I was writing poetry since I was a young girl. My home in Michigan, in West Bloomfield, was hit by a tornado 1975, before many of you were born, probably. Half of the house ripped off and blown away, with it most of my belongings. A few years ago, I was looking for a book which I thought survived the tornado. To my great surprise, not only did I find that book, but in that book, I found one notebook of my poems from the orphanage in Uzbekistan. I had a tall stack of them, tightly written, because paper was very, very precious. You can imagine how yellow that paper is with age. It must have been written some between 43 and 46. I was afraid to touch it, that it would crumble in my hand, but it didn't. And reading some of those poems as an adult surprised me that nothing in it indicates this had been written by a child. Nothing cute, nothing funny, just expressing longing for normalcy. How wonderful it would be to live in a small place with my family, not 100 kids in one room. How great it would be to attend a school. I was always a child, curious, wanting to know, wanting to understand. And my educational opportunities during those years were extremely limited. And of course, I envisioned coming back to Poland. This Poland to me was paradise on earth. But you saw the little girl I was there. But when I came back to Poland with my orphanage, nothing of what I envisioned or hoped for became a reality. I spent another 5 years in orphanages after the war. Anti-Semitism was still raging in Poland after the war as well. Quite a number of Jewish people were killed by the Poles after the war, particularly in small towns. The tiny, tiny Jewish community that was left alive tried to do everything possible for us children who survived. The orphanage was for Jewish children, so were the caregivers, Jews, so was the school. That school was in one room. The city that I was there was Krakow. There were a handful of us Jewish children left, and the school was one room. That school took us on to what used to be a concentration, a death camp. In the display room of that camp was a tall pile of shoes, men's shoes, women's shoes, little kids' shoes, shoes of those who were sent to the gas chambers to die. There was a tall pile of hair. Women who had long hair, they cut their hair before sending them to death, and they used the hair for various purposes. There were lamps with shades made of human skin. Soap made of human flesh. It took me an enormous length of time before I could take a bar of soap in my hand and not think of my aunts, uncles, and cousins. I told you earlier that my extended family numbered close to 100 members. Not a single one of them survived. Not a single one. For my mother to continue living in Poland, she felt like living on the graveyard of her brothers and sisters. She and my older sister, who was by then married, she married a boy from the orphanage. They decided that they can't live in Poland. The only place they could go was Israel, because the Israeli government was providing for Holocaust survivors who wanted to immigrate. I didn't know anything about Israel. I was so eager to catch up with my lost education. I would work in 2 or 3 academic years in 1 calendar year. I was like a sponge absorbing information. But the ruling was that once I reached the age of 17, I would have to leave and take care of myself. I did not know anyone outside of the orphanage. This was my world of people. My mother and my sister lived within a distance that I could periodically visit them with public transportation. And they apparently provided some emotional support which I needed, because I did not have the courage to be left alone after they leave Poland. So in 1950, I joined my mother to immigrate to Poland. Poland was a different chapter of to immigrate to Israel, I'm sorry. Israel was a different chapter of my life with different challenges. I did not know anyone there. This is what I looked like and my mother when we arrived. I knew I would have to support myself. I was pretty sure I would have to support my mother as well, though she looked fine. She was a sick woman. And I did not know the language spoken in Israel. As you can see, I survived. I don't want to leave you with the thought and the feeling, here is this poor woman who has such a tough life, because I don't think about myself that way at all. Not just that I survived, but more importantly to me, I was able to create a meaningful life and significantly contribute to my community. This is what I looked like when I came to the United States. I was 21, 22 years old. I was married, had a baby, did not know a single word of English. That was the 3rd country I was coming without knowing the spoken language. Soviet Union without Russian, Israel without Hebrew, United States without English. But when I was young, I was picking up languages miraculously fast. It didn't take me too long. I entered the University of Cincinnati. I lived in Cincinnati for about 15, 16 years. I earned an undergraduate degree in psychology, a master's in social psychology, and a year later I entered Xavier University, also in Cincinnati, and earned a second master's, an MBA with a major in hospital management. And in May of this year, I received the honorary doctorate in humanities from Oakland University. I used my times and my skills to enrich the life of my communities. I have no time to tell you of all the work I did, but I put in all those years. From 1970, I came to Michigan, and I worked primarily in public health, but more so in mental health, yes. Including for a year, I served an advisory committee in Washington, D.C., a committee that dealt with women, children, and drug addiction. And since I am surrounded by so many teachers, I would tell you I was a public school teacher for 2 years in Israel. And I started off as a teenager, not knowing any Hebrew at all. They put me through less than a year of training and put me in a class with 49 kids. So when I hear the debate that went on years ago about how to children, whether to use English as a second language or vice versa, I remember my experience. I am retired now, which means I work and I don't get paid. But I used my and my time to enrich the life of my community. My community is closer to the Metro Detroit. If one of these days you might come to visit my in Detroit Institute of Arts, #1 museum in the nation, I just received my 25 years pin as a docent. I'm a mediator in court, which means I help people to resolve their conflicts without having to appear before a judge, and the decision becomes legally binding. But the most important thing to me in my mission in life, to use my Holocaust experiences to show what hate and prejudice did and what it can do again unless we learn from it. I try to live my whole adult life guided by the Jewish ethical principle called Tikkun Olam. Tikkun Olam literally means repairing the world. Implied in it is that we each have a responsibility to do everything we can to make this world a little better for everyone. How I do it is, first of all, how I relate to people in my life. I respect fully and equally every good human being. Doesn't matter what the color of their skin, doesn't matter what's their religion, poor or rich, where they came from. They're good human beings. They have my full support. And as I told you, I do volunteer in the Holocaust Center, and I speak all over the country. Since the University of Michigan was published, and I'll tell you more, the University of Michigan published my book in 2012. I have been out on the road speaking to schools, starting with middle schools, universities, almost every social entity that you can think of. This is Huntington, Indiana, 1,800 students in the high school. And this is a particularly emotional picture for me. This was taken 7 years ago. A few months ago, I had a request from a teacher also in Indiana. Ben is the teacher. Ben was a student here. He heard me 7 years ago. He is now the teacher and invited me to his school. And I told him that I felt like a teacher seeing her student growing out to productive adulthood. I spoke in Ben's school. I spoke again in Huntington, and I spoke at Huntington University at this one trip. I have so many here that I can't even identify churches. This was in Houghton, Upper Michigan. I was there a few times. Last time in Houghton, I was in April of this year, Marquette and Houghton. This Department of Human Services, the Knights of Columbus, where I address the keynote speaker at night, and then the women. For a few years, I was a keynote speaker for Constitution Day And I started off telling students why I, a Holocaust survivor, was invited to speak on Constitution Day. Usually, it's the total school body, student body, but some schools, since the first I invite me every year. I have in Zealand and Holland and Rochester, some schools that invite me to every year, but there has 7th and 8th grade, not the whole school. Only once did I speak in elementary school in boys sitting fourth graders because I feared that in aggregate they're a little too young, yes. But they studied immigration. Look at all those wonderful hands up. They had wonderful questions. Every gathering is extremely important. But speaking to military sounds more intense. This is Mississippi Stennis Space Center. This is Admiral Oken. I received a plaque. He bought my book. And more recently, I spoke in another military facility, and they honored me with this plaque, Habitat for Humanity. Sault Ste. Marie. A few months I was in Sault Ste. Marie. You know, Sault Ste. Marie is a very small community. Some schools don't have more than 50 students in the total schools. But school buses came within more than 100 miles radius to fill 800 seats there. And the day before, we had adults, about 500, and I will come back to that picture in a moment. This is, by now I don't even remember which school. Notre Dame Academy, yes, private. In 23, Monroe Community College honored me with the best diversity program. And I have been there already twice, in addition, going June, this month, to the Upward Bound program. And I have spoken last year, and this year too, we'll be speaking to the Upward Bound program. Okay. When I speak to students, I tell them that they are the future leaders of this nation. It will be their responsibility to do everything possible to prevent such horrors from happening. And in order to do so, it is not enough to know what happened. They have to learn and recognize signs that lead to a totalitarian system. When I come to a school, I ask for 2 hours, no less, but in many I have been twice that long if the special group. I tell them, first of all, what happened is closing off or attacking free press, not only preventing people to know what happened, but feeding them with misinformation. And it was, I am not sure whether it was Hitler or Stalin who was the first one to say that free press is the enemy of the people. And I tell them more how it happens, preventing people to get information and the importance of knowing the facts, because our decisions are based on information that we have, yes. And if it's a misinformation, our decisions are not appropriate. Then I tell them about the book burnings in the cities. And when I hear a governmental entity in our country here decides which books can be kept in one library or another, then I have the image of book burning in the city. They were required to bring all the books written by Jewish authors, including the world-known Einstein, book written by people who do not support the system, or books on titles that did not serve the system. Then finding a group as scapegoats, blaming them for everything possible that happened. It was very handy for the Nazis to use Jews as scapegoats because anti-Semitism was deeply rooted in the Western world. But other totalitarian leaders and systems use other groups as scapegoats, and I give them examples of it. And it's important to know that Hitler was democratically elected, which means that if a leader is democratically elected, there are no assurances that he or she will democratically lead. And I tell them a little more how it happens, how he had to support, how he has support from other corrupt leaders. In the picture from Sault Ste. Marie was a woman who stood up apologizing to me. Do I have her here? Yeah. She stood up, choking with tears, apologizing to me what the Germans did to me. I told her that I appreciate the sentiment, but she's only responsible for her actions. She was born in Germany, came to the United States as a teenager. Many years later, when she went to Germany to visit her family, asked, how is it possible that this nation of so highly educated people allowed such horrors to happen? So her family told her, we are people who don't like to get involved. If we don't get involved, and if we accept the injustices that happens, it means they are okay, and they allow the perpetrators to do more and more. A few years ago, I was a keynote speaker for a Martin Luther King honorary event, and the theme there was to be upstander as opposed to bystander. And I stress how important it is for each of us to be upstanders when injustices happen. Then the family said, we thought that those are small things that they won't last long. There is no such a thing as a small injustice. And when they realized of the horrors that would happen around them, they were so afraid of one another they didn't dare to do anything. Here again, the tool of a totalitarian leader and of a totalitarian system is be afraid of the other. Be afraid of those who look like you, be afraid of those who eat like you, and so on and so on. And I also stress that before you students become the leaders of this nation, or before you young people, it will be your responsibility to choose someone who is your leader. And I'm talking about voting. How many people in the world gave their lives for a right to vote? But with it comes the responsibility to vote for someone who reflects your values. And in particular in high schools, it is amazing how students get involved in knowing what goes on around them and asking questions. As a public speaker, I am not political, I cannot. But when they ask a question, I give them an honest answer, yes. I am the only Holocaust survivor who travels to speak. In Michigan, I am the only one, and from what I know, maybe the only one all around, because the handful that are left, many of the Holocaust survivors are either physically or cognitively not in a position to do so. So I kind of feel time is running out. Invite me to your communities, to your schools, to share my story and my message of tolerance and diversity. And almost every school that I am buys my book for students reading. The last school I spoke in May was the Airport Community School System, something. They bought 50 books for the teachers before my presentation, quite in advance. And after that, they ordered 90 books for the student. They haven't paid me yet, but they will. Yes. I hope that each one of you will read the book. By the way, my partner Bob is outside with the book. He makes it possible for me to travel all over Michigan to the Marquette when it takes 2 days. And I am driving to Lansing. I'm okay, but not further. But he came with me. And he by now is so good at it that he earned the title of Director of Transportation and Logistics. So logistics come, he has book, he will be very, you are welcome to buy. We just brought one box, but if there is need for more, they're available on my website, yes. Um, I would like to hear your questions, and I welcome every question. And of course, if you ask me something I don't know about, I will let you know.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. We appreciate your presentation. Board members, questions or comments?
Pardon. Did I hear?
I just want to say thank you so much for doing this. We were chosen to be um, West Bloomfield Local Authors of the Year. And so I got a chance to meet her, and her story is just absolutely
You forgive me if I don't remember. I meet so many people. Forgive me.
Months ago, but I was really impressed by your story. And like you said, it's not a lot of Holocaust survivors left.
No.
And then I wish you would have given this presentation earlier. You might have softened them up about ethnic studies. That happened today at the table, but
when invited.
yeah, no, I mean earlier today. Yeah. They did the schedule, but no. My introduction to the Jewish community was in school, grade school, and Frank. That story, I think it's so powerful to learn other community stories, and it's important so that we can learn empathy, and so we can learn some of the mistakes, the grave mistakes from the past, and we don't repeat them. So really appreciate you sharing yours.
You know, talking about in some schools, I have been in some schools where there is only maybe one Jewish child, one black child, and that is the diversity. And I have been in, and you know, when I speak to the students, first they sense that I respect them. I do respect them fully. And since I lay myself emotionally open, vulnerable, it is amazing what children, students come up to me asking advice on one thing and another. And one school, I have had schools, students, biracial or students with sexuality issues and others asking me, how do I react this way? How do I react that way? And what I suggested to some who claim is talk about get to know, to speak to a teacher when particular students from different countries. Ask the teacher to allow them to tell them something about their own home situation, if how they do one thing, so that the children can learn a little about their culture and start a little more comfortable. Yes.
Yeah. And it's important for the students to see you. You know, I've read a lot about Holocaust survivors. I've seen movies, I've seen documentaries, and
I am in a few of them too, but you know, it's different than seeing me alive.
That's what I was going to say. I've been to the Holocaust Museum. You mentioned in Farmington Hills. I've been there, and I've been to the one in Jerusalem. I never thought I would get a chance to meet a Holocaust survivor. So that is major, and it's impactful, and it's really impactful for students to get. It's like the books come alive. You make the
Yes,
books come
and
alive.
you know, and I get that, first of all, I have stacks of cards from students organized by teachers and then, but the feedback that I get in person is emotionally very touching to me. And I have never had a negative experience. And I have spoken to groups of various political orientation. And some of them, the questions were a little puzzling, but I had no problems because I said, if someone asks a question which I feel is very inappropriate or a little, I would say, I hear you, but I am here to tell my story and I cannot address myself to political issues. And your question is of a political nature. And I leave it at that. And I have never had any problems or any hostility, quite the opposite. When I come, I am welcomed with affection and eagerness to learn, yes. And in some months are very busy. This April was a very busy month, yes.
Thank you.
So I'll be glad to come to your schools as well. Any question? Bob has my cards there, but also in back of each of my book is a way to contact me. My website is irenemillerspeaker.com. Wait a minute. irenemillerspeaker.com. The book is available on my website, but when I speak, I provide it for $15 a copy, and on the website is $23, but it's available there.
Miller, other,
Thank you
other,
for-
other reflections? Ms. Lipton, would you care to share?
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, I just wanted to thank you. I had the opportunity to travel to Poland with a Holocaust survivor from Florida on the Living Legacy trip.
Yes,
through
yes, I
Toronto.
know that.
And I don't have to tell you, but of course our tradition teaches, and as our rabbis tell us, that you save one life,
You saved the world. I know that.
Thank
And I
you.
feel this way too. You save, and so whenever I feel if I impacted in one life, I contributed to saving the world.
Thank you.
My best wishes to each of you, and I will be outside if you still want to ask me some question. I will stay with Bob for a little bit, yes.
Thank you. Ms. Miller, we appreciate you. Board, we're going to take a 10-minute break for anybody who would like to purchase a book or who would like to use the restroom. Okay, thank you.
parking today?
Jen had to meet me downstairs to get me into one of the two lots that has like an abundance of parking spots that are available, but apparently aren't
I asked,
ours.
right, yeah, park down
Or
at
more
the
than that.
far end, yeah. I hear you.
I am. Next item on today's agenda is the approval of nominations to the Special Education Advisory Committee. Today, Special Education Advisory Committee, or SEAC, has 3 nominations for approval. You received biographies board for the nominees with the memo that is attached to the agenda for this item. We welcome our presenters, Dr. Michelle Harmala, Deputy Superintendent, backed by popular demand, Ms. Terry Rink, Director of the Office of Special Education, and Ms. Terry Pettit, SEAC Facilitator. The board will be asked to approve the nominations. There will be no PowerPoint presentation. Dr. Harmala.
Yes, actually, I'm going to hand it over to Terry Pettit, leader of SEAC. Good afternoon, board. We appreciate you having us back again. And as Dr. Rice just mentioned, the Special Ed Advisory Committee, or SEAC, as we're known and loved, is here to request and recommend that the state board approve our 3 nominees to serve as members at large. You were given that information in attachment A on June 1st in the superintendent's memorandum. And we're asking that you appoint those 3 applicants to serve as our SEAC members for their respective 3-year terms as specified.
Thank you very much. Ms. Pettit, any questions, board members?
Well, yeah, I do.
Please.
Do any of the 3 nominees, have they expressed concern with the federal, the problems that the state did as far as, not helping out or treating special ed kids inappropriately, incorrectly, as far as compensatory services? That's what it was. Did any of them express any opinions about whether that's acceptable what the state did, that they're fighting the federal government, that all the other states came to negotiations and actually settled the issue? But, are they fine with that, or do they have any concerns with what MD is doing?
We asked them to fill out a biological resume that we share with all of you, or biographical resume rather, not biological, biographical resume that we share with you. And they haven't even started their work yet. So they're offering to do this work. They won't be invested in that, and that's not the work of SEAC.
I'm interested in members that will commit to fighting for special ed kids, and particular compensatory services when they're denied incorrectly. So thank you.
Ms. Pettit.
If I may.
Please.
I would just like to say we had a lot of different interested people that were interested in these 3 seats. And all of the people that put in an application are very invested in special education. They either have children themselves or grandchildren, or they work in schools with special needs students. So everybody that comes to us or came to us had a lot to say about special education, but it was based in the biographical sense of what the board had asked us to be asking these people. So that's how we put that all together, and the information they gave us was just strictly based on their own experiences, not what's going on in the state or what's going on nationally.
Thank you, Ms. Pettit. Ms. Snyder.
We've been very direct with you every time you come to the table, that it's very clear that being the first state in 27 years in the entire nation that has had the federal government say we're going to do an Office of Civil Rights investigation into the services you provide to your special education students, that we want SEAC to take more of a leadership role in that. Even though SEAC isn't required to take more of a leadership role in that, we don't want SEAC to take the parents and the volunteers that are interested in improving special education and divert them from understanding that these complaints that come before the state end up in the federal government, that even if you're not required to speak to them or required to be directly engaged with them, we want you to take that leadership role in that. We want you to seek SEAC members that take leadership role in that. Over and over and over again, we've talked about this.
I want to be more clear this time. Last time I was a little on the blindsided side, so I've thought about this a lot and would hope I can be more succinct. We are required through federal law, through IDEA, to review cases that have gone to the state. So anything that goes through the Office of Special Ed complaint system, the mediation system, that's what we are charged with. And the purpose is not that we're going to change anything, not that we're going to write new goals for anything, although it's always in the back of our minds what our goals need to be and what do we need to be reporting back to you. But we do it for learning purposes, so we can get a feel for how is special education moving in our state? What are the ALJs saying? What are they thinking? What are they doing? And then the Office of Special Education is then able to work with the ALJs and say, I'm not sure what you say, I'm just gonna put any words in your mouth.
Let me, but just, hold on. Then, if that's your purpose, we asked you, did you entertain these complaints? What do you have to say about these complaints? What role are you willing to play in those complaints? And that shouldn't have blindsided you.
But you asked me about the OCR complaint, and that's something totally different. That is not a federal complaint. It was, but it was through the Office of Civil Rights versus the Office of Special Education. We don't look at anything through the Office of Civil Rights. Our chore, our task, is to look through what comes from the Office of Special Education. So that's...
I'm sure it came to you. I know that when people make complaints, that they only escalate to OCR after they've tried to exhaust this level of complaint, right? If any parent or family in the state of Michigan thought that SEAC would be helpful to them, that it would land with you first before it goes to the federal government and OCR. So, there's no pretty way of explaining away the idea that, that's not, when you came before us last time, that there was no real discussion, no ownership. And then we just keep nominating people, and you don't seem to, come to the table with this honest authenticity that is required in the fact that those OCR complaints are still there. And the people that you want us to nominate to serve with you in this purpose, to know how special education is moving in the state of Michigan, but we're still not talking about that? That's like having a massive elephant in the room and you have no desire to say, it's big, it's gray, it's taking up a ton of room, it's taking crap all over the floor, and we don't seem to care to clean it up. Excuse me for, I'm not going to back down on that. So you want to come and you want us to nominate people to be a part of the process that you don't actually want to work. And it's unacceptable. And we've said that over and over and over again.
So before you, board, is a recommendation of 3 nominees for SEAC. That's the recommendation before you. SEAC has federal requirements under IDEA. We don't make up the requirements. We abide by the requirements, and we abide by them as we are expected to do so in SEAC. These are all people who are invested in the special education community by lived experiences. They don't read about it. They don't make it up. They're living it every single day. And so we have before you, board, a recommendation. And if I could have a motion to approve those 3 nominees. We have a motion from our board president, Dr. Pugh. We have a second from Dr. Pritchett. Is there any more discussion to be had? Ms. Snyder.
Yes, I want to
on the nominees, please.
I want to be very clear that my no to the nominees today is not a no to the importance of their voice or the importance of such a committee that would actually do the work of what is required. It would be much more valuable if we could vote on nominees that we value in asking where they stand on these OCR complaints, how their lived experience directly relates to how we can work together in cleaning up this mess together that we're all living through together. So the no is not to them personally, it's not to their lived experience, it's not to the general consensus that I would love to come to this table and actually have that discussion. It's no to the continuous process and system that seemingly is built on requirements that don't really actually want to change to get us to that place. That's the no. It's not the no to them. It's not the no to their children. It's not the no to improving special education.
Thank you very much. Ms. Evans, a roll call vote on the three nominees.
Bullock,
Yes.
Lipton,
Yes.
McMillan,
No.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Pugh, Robinson,
Yes.
Snyder,
No.
and Tilly.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, presenters.
Thank you.
Dr. Harmala, the next time you come before the board on a SEAC, I hope you'll consider a name change to Terry. Board, it's 3:44 p.m. and we're going to hear the report of the State Board President.
Let's see, we're at the halfway point of the year and the end of the school year, and I yet remain encouraged by what we have been able to accomplish and work through together across Michigan by being grounded in our commitment to Michigan's students and their success. This month, I've had the opportunity to participate in a number of events and initiatives that reflect the diverse priorities of our education system, from early learning to post-secondary access, from community partners to legislative oversight. Just to quickly run through a few, was able to participate in the Flint to HBCU Forum. It was the 4th annual event. The event is focused on inspiring Flint area students to consider historically Black colleges and universities as a pathway to higher education and leadership. The organizers of the event, the FBC Initiative, put that event on just to show how essential it is and to uplift the aspiration of young people, reminding them that they have a place in the future of this nation's leadership. Had the opportunity to visit in Saginaw Jerome Preschool to go on a tour of a school that was owned by the Saginaw School District, and now the ISD is restructuring and reconfiguring that old elementary school into an early childhood education program that is the state of the art, and ensuring that all children, regardless of their zip code, have access to high quality early learning, and hopefully we'll get an opportunity to do a visit there, as Saginaw, the ISD, as well as the Saginaw Public Schools have built a new high school and have done some reconfiguration across the board. Had the opportunity to go to Saginaw Valley State University end of the year luncheon, and was able to join university staff as well as partners to reflect on accomplishments and discuss strategic priorities moving forward, looking at deepening partnerships between K through 12 and higher education. As Board Member Tilly mentioned, was able to attend the Mackinac Policy Conference, went back and forth as to whether or not I was going to go, if we were going to go. We saw towards the end that there was more education programming that was put on the agenda, so felt it necessary to go. So education was undeniably, definitely on the agenda, from early childhood to literacy to workforce development to post-secondary access. There were conversations about the future of Michigan's education system, which was a recurring topic. And I must say that as I listened to the discussions that were discussions around policy, it became clear that the voices of those constitutionally responsible for the oversight of public education were excluded. And just thinking about how that sets up false expectation and can be misleading around discussions that are balanced and discussions that are informed conversations about what truly drives educational success. Again, there was a lot of talk about governance with calls for restructuring of how education is overseen at the state level. One of the topics that I brought up, and some of the board members members here have talked about this in other settings, is around the National Association of State Boards of Education, or NASB, and our NASB delegate has reminded us, Dr. Robinson, of 50-state study that really looks at governance and has concluded that governance alone does not determine educational outcomes, but real progress requires addressing the full ecosystem: equitable school funding, high quality early education, teacher recruitment and retention, inclusive curriculum, student mental health and well-being, some of the things that we talk about here at this table, and of course is necessary when we're having these conversations. And we know that if education is going to remain on the agenda, we must move beyond the surface level solutions. We must make sure that there are people who are at and included in these conversations at least, to raise that. And we must ensure that education leaders, students, educators, and families are not just discussed, but present, respected, and heard. And only then can we truly serve the children of Michigan. While at the policy conference, I was able to participate in a conversation that occurred with parents, and that was a good thing. Was honored to participate in a space where parent and community voices took center stage. It was a hybrid virtual event where we were able to speak to parents, that was organized and this year as well as last year by the Detroit Parent Networks and Parents on Policy virtual town hall that was held while on the island. Was able to visit Dearborn Public Schools, do a further dive, and actually see for myself what we heard of. You all probably remember the student Hattie and the educators that were here from Dearborn Public Schools, and was able to actually go to Dearborn and see for myself that programming. Was able to, it was last Sunday, participate in the Institute for Education Innovation and have conversation with superintendents, education leaders from across the state, looking at the state of public education, and have a conversation with them. As I mentioned to many of you, and some probably have seen, Dr. Rice and I participated or went before the Michigan House Oversight Committee, and that was on June the 3rd. I think overall, honestly, what could have been an opportunity for collaborative discussion on real challenges in education was turned into a politically charged spectacle. And while we came prepared and gave information, and we were really able to use a presentation prepared by the department, a well thought out, robust presentation to really look at student progress, record graduation rates, critical investments in literacy, talk about educator development, how Michigan is beginning to reverse longstanding inequities in our system, as well as the hurdles and burdens. And I thank the department for putting that presentation together. But it was pretty clear that we were met with attacks that ignored that progress, and began to, and there was a lot of focus on even the dismantling of our own education department here. So, these efforts that are underway, they do politicize education. They erode public trust, push forward agendas that have little to do with children's academic success. But nevertheless, as I said in my testimony, we stand, and I'm sure that all of you would agree, ready to work with anyone willing to lead with facts, integrity, and shared commitment to student well-being. And I really, I had an opportunity over the weekend to thank Representative Dylan Wagella on information that he was able to present that debunked misinformation that was given, And I think it was Representative Green, Dr. Rice, who was able to acknowledge the work that it took for this department to bring forward the literacy policy agenda that we know will help students. And I appreciated the fact that she talked about the 5 years, the fight, all the work that it took for this department to cut through um, the politics and make sure that agenda, the dyslexia, as well as the science, the letters training, that those bills that we discussed today move forward for the benefit of our children. Finally, as you all heard, we spent a lot of time on the superintendent search process, and so happy that we're able to get that underway, and hopefully we are feeling comfortable with that, and we'll feel more comfortable, and that we are ready to move forward quickly, expeditiously, to bring on a superintendent in October. So I will just say, in closing, that this month reinforced, the complexity of Michigan's education ecosystem. But again, happy to work with each and every one of you to elevate the voices of our students, to defend public education, to promote policies that center equity, truth, and opportunity for all. Just in closing, I just saw that it was PTSD month. I really didn't even recognize that, but in hearing Irene and her story, very, very touching story for so many reasons, but just uplifting. I would be remiss if I did not uplift the voice of a friend that I met, and her name was Annika Burke Koistra. And Annika's family, as I was sharing with board member Lipton, was from the Netherlands, and Annika is Dutch. Her family harbored or hid Holocaust victims. And Annika and I met, I didn't have my, it's late, but Annika and I just happened to meet at a gas station. Her family have been honored, and she was coming back from the DC area, and her family has been honored many times. But one of her saying that she would, and I bring up PTSD because she would do presentations. One she did at Saginaw Health Department, and we had to turn off the lights because Annika had PTSD from her experience of her family hiding people in her home and her family. Because she was young, they would tell her that the people that she saw weren't really in her home. So, but one of the things that she would say, and I think that it's fitting for the moment that we're in, is that we should all have so much love in our heart that there's no room for hate. And I'm just reminded by Irene's story and the messaging that she gave us today. So, in thoughts around PTSD and uplifting Annika and those who call out injustice, and just reminding myself of the message that she left with me. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh. Short superintendent's report. I want to thank our educators, our support staff, our administrators for another strong year with our young people and for our young people with appreciation. It's not an easy gig to be a public school educator. We appreciate every day what our educators do every day. I want to remind the board that the department is working with the Attorney General on 6 cases against the federal administration. And in all 6 cases, birthright citizenship, pause on federal grants and loans, late liquidation of pandemic relief ESSER rescission funding, cuts to U.S. Ed, the halving, the cutting in half of U.S. Ed FTEs, Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the certification that SEAs and LEAs are abiding by Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and then the cuts to the Institute for Museum and Library Services. The federal administration has been enjoined, prohibited from moving forward in all 6 of those cases by federal courts. All 6 of those cases. That's number one. But number two, and as importantly, that federal courts enjoin the federal administration in particular ways at the moment of circumventing, among other things, separation of powers in the federal government, does not mean that this administration cannot go to Congress and seek to include in the fiscal year 26 budget the cuts that it has tried to impose administratively. This is a much greater concern because it is, in fact, legal. The fiscal year 26 presidential executive budget recommendation includes just one example, just a single example, includes $6 million for all intents and purposes, maintenance funding for the Institute for Museum and Library Services. That's a euphemism for non-funding. That's a euphemism for gutting the Institute for Museum and Library Services. We heard from local librarians last month. We heard from State Librarian Randy Riley last month. We heard about the importance of small dollars for institutions, local public libraries, that exist on a shoestring. The Library of Michigan, as you know, board nests under the Michigan Department of Education in state government. So I share this with you not so much as a legal update, but as a way to remind you that there is something as pernicious down the pipeline, the weaving of these cuts into a federal budget, which would be much harder to push back against were it approved by Congress. So we urge you, if you think that local libraries are important, and you do, that you will speak out against these cuts and education-related cuts as well. Board is 4:01, and we're going to pivot to the state and federal legislative update. We'll hear from Mr. Bob Wheaton, Director of the Office of Governmental Affairs, Ms. Olivia Ponte, Legislative Liaison in the Office of Public and Governmental Affairs, who will provide the state and federal legislative update. Mr. Wheaton and Ms. Ponte, welcome.
Good afternoon, board members and Dr. Rice, and I will turn it right over to Olivia to give us the update.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So the legislature has had a busy month, even with a week in Mackinac for the conference. So first and foremost, the governor did sign House Bill 4345, which is now PA5 of 2025. And this is the bill that was introduced and passed in response to the ice storm, but the law will now permit local boards in counties with a declared state of emergency to exempt the district from the minimum number of hours and days missed due to that emergency. So again, signed June 2nd and now PA5. In the Senate has been busy as well. Many of the bills we have discussed previously, such as the Senate version of the cell phone policy that was passed this month, as well as the Senate proposed budgets, both the general omnibus budget with all the various department budgets, as well as the school aid budget that was passed from the Senate. Just today, the Senate Education Committee took testimony on a bill that would allow parents and guardians to opt their child out of the work keys test, the work skills part of the Michigan Merit Examination, as well as another bill that would require schools to have a procedure for if their school should close. So that hearing happened today, and that was the action that happened in the Senate this month. On the House side, also busy. The committee has taken testimony on several bills, one that would create the Purple Star School Program, offering additional supports for students in military-connected families, a bill that would prohibit certain artificial ingredients in school meals. And the full chamber has also passed a number of bills that we've discussed previously, such as a bill to allow hunter safety to be taught as a part of a PE class or as an extracurricular in school. The House version of the cell phone bill that was passed with many more exemptions than had previously been written into the language. And a slew of some school safety bills, mostly regarding okay to say notifications of tips, so including the okay to say program contact info on a student ID, requiring the Office of School Safety that sits within the Michigan State Police to report tips received on a quarterly basis, redefining what is considered a tip, and a bill that would also lower the amount of required fire drills from 8 to 7 and increase the number of lockdown drills from 3 to 4. The House has not yet passed a budget, but they did introduce shell bills, which are bills that we will expect the budget to be substituted into. So right now there's just a $100 placeholder in these bills, but we will expect that House Bill 4576 will contain the MDE budget and 4577 will contain the House school aid budget. So I will pause there before going on to my federal budget update, if there's any questions.
Questions of board members about state? Dr. Pugh?
Board Member Tilly brought up, I believe it was the Senate bills that we were waiting to go have I think it was, I don't even think they made it to a committee hearing on comprehensive history. I think I asked about them a few months ago, but Board Member Tilly said that she spoke with Senator Chang, and it looks like she wants to move those. Can we get an update on those by our next legislative meeting?
Yeah, they have not yet been introduced, but I will see what I can find out.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh. Any other board members? Ms. Lipton?
Just a point of clarification. The legislation regarding the declared state of emergency regarding ice storms, would that potentially affect the 149 days that we heard about as being sort of ratcheted back? Is that would that
Unrelated.
potentially be less
Unrelated.
totally unrelated?
The department was very supportive of that relief, important relief related to weather outside of the control of local school officials. Yeah.
So no effect on.
None whatsoever.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You bet. It would be, if you recall the chart that Dr. Carnell put forward, this was an exception to the 9 days. So it's 109, it starts with 180 days as a so-called minimum. Our point is that the 180 days actually functions as a maximum and, in fact, isn't vaguely close to what most young people experience currently in their school years. Nonetheless, we're well aware that you can't that local school officials can't control the weather. Yeah, thank you. If there are no other questions on state, we'll pivot to federal.
Great. So like Dr. Rice mentioned, President Trump's FY26 budget proposal was released, and this proposal includes $12 billion in education cuts with some major restructuring across K-12 programming. So while a few programs would see level or increased funding, including charter school grants, impact aid, Indian education, and the Perkins CTE program, the proposal also introduced significant consolidation block granting and cuts, and I'll describe a few of those here. So while maintaining the $18 million in funding for Title I, the proposal would consolidate 18 programs, such as Title II, which is Supporting Effective Instruction State Grants, the Rural Education Achievement Program, REAP, Title IV, Parts A and B, which are student support and academic enrichment grants, and 21st Century Community Learning Centers, respectively, and McKinney-Vento, Education for Homeless Children and Youth, into a K-12 simplified funding program. So this program would be funded at $2 billion, but that would mean a $4.535 billion decrease from the total previous funding for those programs. Moving on to special education, while IDEA Part B grants to states would see a $677 million increase, this proposal would consolidate all IDEA programs into one program, essentially eliminating different parts of IDEA. For program eliminations, the following programs would be eliminated under this proposal. Title I, Part C, which is migrant education and special programs for migrant students. Title III, English learner and immigrant student grants. Teacher, school, and leader incentive grants, supporting effective educator development or SEED grants, full service community schools, and equity assistance centers. Lastly, on Medicaid, a new analysis of the last-minute Medicaid provision that was passed as a part of the U.S. House Reconciliation Bill estimates that upwards of 10 million individuals could lose coverage. Now, this just represents the first step of the federal appropriations process, and department staff, myself included, will continue to keep you apprised as we further analyze how this will really impact Michigan.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ponte. Board members, questions on federal update? Dr. Pugh.
So I just want to be clear that the IDEA dollars in the proposed federal budget by the administration, while it looks like there are increases, they're actually decreases because there are other programs that are pulled into those dollars or into that.
All of IDEA would be consolidated into one program. We're still analyzing how the funding pieces of that would work in such a block grant. But yeah, they would be consolidated into one program.
So we are to be concerned because we just passed a resolution here at this table speaking of how IDEA, what was promised has never been realized, and then we're looking at the rollback of those dollars. Okay. In addition to not ever realizing what was promised.
I think she said they were increasing the dollars.
They're increasing.
Total. That's what she said.
Yeah, but
IDEA Part B is increased by $677 million, but all 7 parts of IDEA would be consolidated into one block grant. So we're still trying to further analyze how that would materialize.
So they may be increased or it may be decreased. You're not sure. In total.
In total, yeah, I'd have to further look at that.
well, from what I've heard, it would impact whatever was increased. It would be like if your household budget increased, but you have more people moving in.
I don't know. I'm not sure. That's not how I heard it. She's not saying that's the case. She's saying she's not sure.
Well, I read it.
We'll get additional information for the board, and if you have additional questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Anyone else with questions or comments around the federal report? Going once, twice, thrice, hearing and seeing none. Ms. Tilley, would you please like to, thank you very much, presenters, we appreciate you. Ms. Tilley, would you like to move your Job Corps resolution?
Yes, I would like to move the Job Corps resolution.
Okay, so we have a motion to move the Job Corps resolution. Do we have a second? The second from Dr. Pritchett. Ms. Tilley, you've already read it into the record. Would you like to re-describe it for those who have not been hanging on to the state board meeting the last 6 hours with bated breath?
Yes, as many of us know, and all of us in this room know, that the Job Corps program had been shut down by the U.S. Department of Labor, and many students were displaced, became homeless, conversations that I've had as I've checked on students, they have been spread throughout different shelters. Um, this is a very serious issue. Not only does Job Corps house students in 3 locations in Michigan, but it also provides training. It allows them to get their high school diploma or GED and helps them get jobs once they have completed getting that or the training that they've desired. So we want to make sure that we are supporting the Job Corps students, that we are standing with them, and that we are letting officials know how important this program is, not only for Michiganders, but nationwide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tilley. Mr. McMillan.
I don't see any dollars in here. I see about 300 students for, let's see, 170, 147, 212, so maybe 650 students. I mean, is this, we're talking millions of dollars, or what's the, this is mainly talking about funding, it appears. So, like, how much funding was cut or potentially cut? Is it millions a year or hundreds of thousands, or?
Millions, they shut down the whole program nationwide.
Do you know how, yeah, do you know how much it costs for these 600 kids or 500 kids?
I don't recall.
Okay, I mean, it's certainly something that would easily fit inside Michigan's budget, I would imagine, or we have a lot of nonprofits that would probably help if it's a good program. Sounds like it probably is, but doesn't make any sense sending the money to federal government, having them lop off 20%.
I don't know that it would easily fit inside of Michigan's budget, but we do have a representative here from the governor's office if she wanted to address that.
Well, I mean, there's priorities. There's plenty of places to cut as well.
I don't want to cut anybody off. I looked up some information earlier. Can I share?
Please.
Okay. It costs roughly $80,000 per Job Corps student. I think the graduation rate from Job Corps is about 30%. And then post-separation from Job Corps, they're making roughly $16,000 to $17,000 a year. I read that it's on pause. It's not shut down completely. I think they're trying to take those numbers and say, is this really serving people? Because if it costs $80,000 a year while you're in the Job Corps program, is it giving you the skills you need to be successful later on in life if you're still living in poverty, right? I don't really know that they have shut it down. I think they're pausing it and saying, is this sustainable? Right now it's working on roughly a $214 million deficit, and this is what the numbers look like for people who are participating in it. So I think they're trying to ask honest questions about, is this working? Is it helpful? And is it sustainable? I don't think they're trying to shut the whole show down. I think they're trying to say, this is the numbers, these are the vital signs, we have to look at this and make sure it's working.
They did shut the whole.
I have no problem with the response, but thank you.
They did shut everything down. They without warning, had them remove the kids from the site and then gave them to June 30th to wrap up administration-wise. But I certainly did, I love to research and I love data. So I certainly did go on to find data so that I can look at different sources. And the only source that I could really find was what the White House put out. They removed the sources from the Job Corps websites, and I couldn't find articles on it so that I could see the trends in the data. So that was a red flag for me, because there should be multiple sources of data for this. But the 2025 budget includes a total of $10.3 billion for the Employment and Training Administration, ETA.
Probably triple that.
So, but we know that this harms children, and we know that most of the children that are in these facilities are children from underserved populations. children that come from poverty, children that don't have homes to go back to, which is why they ended up in the shelters in the first place. And without programs like these, where they can get their GED or high school diploma and training and job placement, they could end up in the streets doing God knows what. So this gives them opportunities that they would not otherwise have.
Can I respond?
Please.
Okay. So I can share the data that I found. It's from various departments from different states like Nevada. So it wasn't, and some of it is from the U.S. Department of Labor. So it sounds like so Job Corps is saying it's shut down, but the U.S. Department of Labor is saying it isn't shut down. I don't exactly know where it actually is, but can we agree that, is it working, right? This idea of like it costs $80,000, but then is it setting them up for success if they're not graduating, the 30% graduation rate? And that might just be Nevada's data that they're sharing with the U.S. Department of Labor. I don't know what ours is, what Michigan's is. I think that would be important for us to talk about in terms of what the programming looks like here and whether or not it's serving the students. I mean, on its face, I understand what you're saying when you shut the doors. I mean, that was something I complained about for 3 years during COVID, right? When you shut doors like that and you send people home and maybe they don't have a home, that's pretty significant. So I'm not advocating for that. What I'm advocating for is making sure that we have all of the data that we need to have, at least about Job Corps Michigan. And is it truly shut down? Is it paused? And what are the questions they're trying to ask and problems they're trying to solve? Because it's not clear to me right now.
Okay, thank you very much. You know what, did you have something to add? Okay.
I do.
Please, and then back to you. Thank you.
Because the be it resolved language, we don't even take in, I don't see here where we're even talking about, we're talking about prioritizing funding for them. We're not discussing whether or not it's shut down or, and if it was a TRO, the reason why they haven't been shut down, they had to be taken to court. This is just saying that we prioritize the funding and sustainability of Job Corps. So we're not really talking, to me, we're not talking about the recent shutting down of the program and then the temporary restraining order that brought them back online temporarily. So, and the other thing that I will say is I don't have all the data, but what I do know is that we're seeing the cumulative impact on certain populations, certain children of the current administration, the cuts from Medicaid to shutting down the U.S. Department of Education to sending kids home from Job Corps, their safe havens. The other thing that we're not looking at is the billions of dollars of tax cuts, the billions of dollars that we're looking to send to school vouchers, billions of dollars that we're giving to millionaires, billionaires. So that conversation, I mean, this conversation is definitely imbalanced without that information. And we're talking about children needing safe space.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh. Back to you, Ms. Tilley.
And bottom line is, it's been all over the news about them shutting the doors without even time to make a plan for the young adults. We want to make sure that students are safe, number one. This is, COVID, and this is oranges and apples. But really want to focus on the fact that even though there was a judge that intervened and it's temporarily paused, this could happen at any time, again, depending on the outcome of that. So we just want them to know that we are standing with them, we are focused, and it does say that the board commits to collaborating with state and federal partners to advocate for policies and resources. So we want to make sure that the state and the federal funding that has been cut, does not abruptly get cut for Job Corps, and we don't want to see it for other education programs either, honestly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tilly. Mr. McMillan.
Yeah, I was interrupted, but I wanted to finish my thought that it doesn't make any sense to me to send money to the federal government, let them take off 25%, provide a lot of inefficiencies, and then send us back money. I don't see why the federal government has to provide Job Corps services. If it's a good program, the state can do it. Nonprofits can do it, charities. It's something that, the further away it is from accountability at the federal government, the less likely it's going to be done well. And it sounds like if they're spending $80,000 and the kids get out of it and make $15,000 a year, maybe that it really isn't. It could be done a lot better if it was maybe funded and cared for at a more local level. Thank you.
I just want to briefly say,
Please.
this is not a state program. This is a federal program. It was established in 1964 by Congress. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tilly. Anyone else? Senator Bullock, are you leaning in? Waiting for the question. Okay. All right. There you go. And your name is not Zullock, but it's Bullock. Ms. Snyder.
So this issue is important to me. I would like to understand it more. Like when you say we're not referring to it being shut down, it does say whereas such closures. I need the information on the table with the people that are doing what we say they're doing. And it says that we're open to having that conversation. I'm still open to having that conversation because I think when you think about CTE and Job Corps and you consider the whole big picture of what's available for our at-risk youth, that discussion has to take place. We're having it here even though it's a Department of Labor concern and it's the State Board of Education because we understand it impacts the population of people that we serve. But I feel like the research I've done, it's not consistent with what is here, and I want to be a part of the conversation. So is there any way you can facilitate that? Is that how that would look? How would that?
We're happy to seek additional information. It has been on the news. Job Corps was shut down. A federal court opened Job Corps back up.
So it is up and running?
It is through an injunction that the Job Corps' doors are reopened.
Okay, so then is this resolution in effect?
It is.
They're open because it says whereas such closures.
So that injunction happened in the last few days. They opened the doors yesterday, started receiving children at 1 p.m. They, in fact, are trying to locate children to let them know because, like I said, they were displaced in different homeless shelters and other things. Different cities are working to help the youth, and even when they initially got displaced, Councilman Benson, I contacted him. He's a councilman in Detroit because I knew he was working on this. Different elected officials and leaders have been working on this. Because this is temporary with the courts, we don't know what's going to happen yet.
Okay.
So that is why we still want it to go forward today.
Okay. So reopen, can you facilitate a conversation somehow with a federal representative of even if we could Zoom with them, I don't care. We should have a real discussion about exactly what is happening and how it will impact and be more clear about how it's impacting Michigan.
We would be happy to pull together whatever we can find in the media. These are people whose program disappeared. Their information on websites has been constrained. This is not unlike what we've seen in the last 5 months relative to other federal programs as well. We're happy to pull information from Michigan on Job Corps closures, reopenings, and a couple of articles nationally as well. But the reality is that the federal government that wants to close Job Corps not spending a lot of time putting billboards up about Job Corps.
So, just a few more questions, just to understand. So, post-COVID, I thought we also had efforts underway, and I don't think they're entirely different, so let me just, let me explain what I'm trying to say. Didn't we try to reach out to the students that hadn't returned to school for months after we reopened doors? That was something that was our goal. I remember we talked about it at the table. What did that effort look like? Could we employ that effort with these students?
So, so I'm not sure how analogous this is. The COVID closures were a function of a host of things, and decisions not to attend school in person were a function of a variety of different actors. Parents, number one, local school officials, number two, local health officials, number three. Okay, so when the state got involved with district officials to encourage the district's decision to stay remote, to change. We weren't trying to change the decisions of individual parents in individual districts. We were trying to change the decisions of particular school districts that decided that they were going to stay remote through all or most of the 2020-21 school year.
So we still had a very robust discussion about students that you quote unquote use the words missing. So, and we talked about the need to encourage them to come back to school, right? So I'm asking, is there a way that we can reach these students that you are referring to within Job Corps in the same fashion? What did it look like? Is that a possible endeavor?
Yeah, please.
In that situation, I think you used a great word. You were encouraging, because students knew that schools had reopened. Parents knew. It was on the news. People were contacted, letters, whatever, different methods. In this situation, and even I spoke with Park West with Saba, they have foster youth that they are servicing that are in the Job Corps. Youth that have aged out in the Job Corps. So they don't know. Some of them don't have phones. So it's not a thing of they are skipping, which is what you're kind of describing. A lot of that sounds like skipping, but
They're missing. They don't have an address.
Yeah.
They may not, so we don't have a way to find them.
We talked about the news blasting out that Job Corps has ended. Do we have any capacity to connect and use the same outlets?
I'm sorry, I have to understand the question if I could. To connect with whom?
Well, the news has blasted out the Job Corps has ended, and then a day ago the injunction came. Can they do the same thing to help and encourage this?
It is in the news, but if they don't have a home, they don't have a TV. You know what I mean? They don't have a phone, they don't have access to the news. So some of them they have been able to round up, but not all of them.
Okay.
So they are still trying to work with shelters even, calling shelters to let the students know, because shelters, from my understanding, quickly let in and helped a lot of these youth.
Okay. Understood.
Thank you for the questions. Any other questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Bullock,
Yes.
Lipton,
Yes. McMillan?
No.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
Robinson,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
and Tilly.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Board. Board, we are at board member comments at 4:32. Please.
For one, I did email you. I would like a list of the districts that are not teaching letters, or if it's the schools or whatever it is. You know, let's, at least we could do is call them out and see what's going on, maybe find out what's going on with that. And also, you know, when I see charts and graphs and they talk about the years of malaise under Granholm where even funding was, you know, might have been cut, or, you know, I want to make, as far as the foundation allowance, and I want to make it clear, because I was in the legislature during that time, median income was down 15%. I mean, I don't, unemployment was up in 15% in 2019, I mean, or 2009, I'm sorry. 12.5% in 2010, and those were tough areas, and, foundation allowance might have been cut 2% one year. So, the average household saw 6 times worse in their cuts. And a lot of people were unemployed. I don't think districts did a lot of cutting, maybe some of them did, but I just want to make it clear that, there was attempts during those very difficult times, and Michigan suffered much more under Granholm than most states. Certainly on average, we were about the worst. But, there was certainly tough times all around, and so, there might have been a cut here or there, but the average household experienced much worse. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Other board members? Dr. Pritchett and Ms. Lipton.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that I had the opportunity to attend the graduation ceremony last Friday for the class of 2025 at the Michigan School for the Deaf. It's the third year I've had the privilege of attending that ceremony. It's very meaningful for the students, for their families, for the friends, and for the deaf community in Flint in particular. Just 2 quick observations. First of all, when you walk into that school, it's quiet. And I'm not used to that when I walk into a school, But it's not that there's no noise going on or no communication, because there is. You just have to stand back and watch it in the hallways with the students and staff there. So that's the first thing that kind of hits me when I go visit the school. The second thing is the ceremony itself. Staff and students at the school recognize that many of us attending that ceremony don't know sign language, and I want to thank our signers who come faithfully every month to our board meetings so that we are able to communicate in a different way. But because staff recognize the fact, and the students recognize the fact that we, or at least I shouldn't say we, am not familiar at all with signing, they include us by having an interpreter talk to us about what's going on. So when the student who gave the senior speech was giving his speech through signing, of course, we were able to understand and be moved by the things that he said, and that happened throughout the ceremony. So I just wanted to say that it occurred to me that I felt included, and for that, I honor inclusion across the board. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pritchett. Ms. Lipton, and then Dr. Robinson.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to thank Board Member Tilley for connecting us with Irene Miller.
Yes.
I've had the privilege of hearing Irene as well as reading her book as someone that has been involved in the Zeppelin Holocaust Center in West Bloomfield, Farmington Hills, excuse me. And it's a great resource. I would also like to thank my colleagues around the table for, back in December, I believe it was, for voting in favor of a resolution to encourage a more holistic, anti-Semitism focused Holocaust curriculum Holocaust education in the state of Michigan. And I'd also like to thank the department for working in that space. And just to let all of you know, on August 14th, the department, along with other organizations in this space, There's going to be August 14th at Lansing Community College, a day of learning for educators in the space of Holocaust education to learn about some new ways of teaching about the Holocaust. And we are I'm encouraging anyone with a network to please uplift this day of learning. I think it's going to be very, very impactful on our educators and certainly help them respond to the resolution that we all passed back in December. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Ms. Lipton. Dr. Robinson.
Just a quick one, because she doesn't blow her own horn. Dr. Pritchett was the one who encouraged me to accept an invitation to a Crossroads Cafe event at Grand Blanc High School last week, and it was fantastic. Nathan Reek, I believe, is the AP government teacher, and both Judy and I were honored to be invited and participate in it, and the kids are okay.
Yeah.
The kids are really smart. They are being taught really well, and they know what's going on, and are much more open-minded and thoughtful than a lot of adults that I know. Not around this table, but in other places. But just wanted to really thank Judy for encouraging me to do that. I'm really glad I had the opportunity.
I'm glad you went. It's great.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Other board members who care to share? Ms. Tilley.
I cannot, you okay? I cannot overstate the value of ethnic studies being implemented system-wide here in Michigan. I had a monologue, but I will not read the monologue I prepared, seeing that Senator Bullock did second the resolution, and we at least had some discussion on it. But I really hope that you all will consider moving this in the future. I also want to thank Dr. Rice and Dr. Parnell. I had an issue, community issue with a parent, and I just want to thank you both for the conversation on it, the thoughtful conversation and the advocacy around it. Even though the mom did not receive the outcome she wanted, she really appreciated the advocacy. And I just wanted to acknowledge and thank again Dr. Jeffrey Robinson, principal at Paul Robeson Malcolm X Academy, for his presentation on Juneteenth. I want to thank his director of transportation, Lamont Corbin, who sat at the end of the table with him, and he is also the school board president of Warrendale. I want to thank Ronaldo Triplett for coming, even though he didn't make a comment, Benton Harbor School Board Secretary. I want to thank him for being in the room, and Irene Miller, Holocaust survivor, for her just the sharing her story in such an in-depth way and really painting a picture for us, and her director of transportation, Bob, for coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tilley. Any other board members care to share? Going once, twice, thrice. Board members, in addition to the interviews for the next state superintendent, which will take place the 3rd and 4th weeks of August, future regular board meetings will be Tuesday, August 12th, Tuesday, September 9th, and Tuesday, October 14th. Same bat time, same bat station. If there are any topics board members would like to recommend for future meeting agendas, please notify Ms. Evans or me at 4:43 p.m. or we are adjourned. Thank you.